Okay, are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you today to the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District and Culture Works Grant Panel Review for the 25-26 Artist Opportunity Grant. The grant program empowers Montgomery County, Ohio artists to advance their careers through professional development opportunities and the creation of new works. This program is made possible by the funding from the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, which we will refer to throughout the day as MCACD, and is administered by Culture Works. And now I'd like to pass it off to Jessica and Liz.
Good morning. My name is Liz Mayhart. I am part of the staff support for the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District. I want to thank all the panelists and artists for participating, but artists can request grants of up to $5,000 to complete projects taking place between January 1st and December 31st, 2026. With the support and investment of Montgomery County's Board of Commissioners, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District has provided up to $75,000 for this year's grant cycle. I'd like to thank our MCACD Board of Directors and County Commissioners for their deep and ongoing commitment to support, nurture, and encourage the development and preservation of arts and culture throughout Montgomery County. This commitment ensures our county is a vibrant community in which to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Liz. We want to welcome all the applicants joining us today, especially of those of you who are applying maybe for the first time. We also want to welcome artists who are considering applying for the future and who made a special effort to attend today's public review. I encourage you to contact ren@cultureworks.org if you'd like to discuss what you witness here today. Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District and Culture Works want applicants to do well during the application and review process. And your questions and feedback help us to ensure we're meeting the community's needs. To those community members, board members, and county representatives in attendance, thank you for your support of the arts in our community. Back to
In
you,
keep-
Liz.
Thank you. In keeping with the MCACD and Culture Works commitment to transparency, an independent panel of artists, grant writers, and community members evaluates applications and makes funding recommendations. In an effort to ensure a fair and detail-oriented review, the panel was split into two teams, giving each panelist no more than 17 applications to review. Each team includes artists, arts administrators, and an experienced writer. Thank you to the panelists who will now take just a few sentences to introduce themselves.
Who starts, Ren?
You start, Sue.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Stevens. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I keep getting a notification that my audio quality isn't good. So let me know if I start sounding garbled or something. Again, I'm Sue Stevens. I have 40 years of experience in arts administration, primarily in the performing arts field and presenting performing arts, working at Dayton Live for the last 25 years. So that's me.
Mike, you're muted. Yeah.
I know. Sadly enough, yeah. Anyway, good morning. My name is Mike Flanagan. It's my pleasure to be here today. My area of artistic expression is a vocalist, currently now with the Bach Society of Dayton.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Tim?
I'm Timothy Wells. I'm a visual artist, art educator, podcast host, and I work with artists and communities and organizations to bring art to the public sector.
Jamal?
Yes, yes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamal Durr. I primarily operate as a full-time visual artist, do a bit of teaching as well, working with the youth. And yeah, just excited to be here and have a good old chat with you all. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to all of you who are serving on this panel. You know, it takes a lot of time to go through the applications with thoughtfulness and, you know, mindfulness about how all these applicants have developed projects to serve our community and to further develop their talents and their career. And so we thank each of you for joining us today and going through this process. And now I'd like to introduce to you formally Ren. She is the Director of Grant Making and Impact here at Culture Works, and today she will serve as the panel chair. Ren, can I pass this off to you, and could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, and thank you. I'd like to begin just by saying thank you to my associate, Madison, for all of your support through the process. Could not do it without you. Also to say thanks to Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, Liz, for your support of the artists in our area, which is huge, and really appreciate all of that. I'm working with you and Jessica on that. And Lisa, thank you as always for your guidance. Everybody, I am Ren. I am super happy and excited to finally be here for panel A of the 25-26 Artist Opportunity Grant. And I want to thank all of the panelists for your extra time, especially those of you who came on board kind of at the last minute to fill our void after our earlier cancellation. With all of that, the purpose of today's panel meeting is to provide the panelists here today with an opportunity to hear each other's perspectives and for artists to hear specific feedback about their applications. Attendees should keep in mind that today's discussions will move quickly. However, the panelists have conducted a thorough review and initial scoring of applications over the course of these weeks prior to today's meeting. To ensure that there is sufficient time to discuss all applications, panelists will not address all areas of each application in their comments, but will focus on the primary strengths and areas for improvement with the goal that applicants are able to improve their grant writing and chances in the future, regardless of today's outcome. For non-applicants who are considering applying in the future, we hope today's review gives you some perspective on the process and an idea of what makes a strong application. CultureWorks offers grant writing workshops, which are announced on our Apply for Funding webpage, and those workshops, along with today's public session, can go a long way in clarifying the grant writing process. Audience members may only observe the meeting and will not be permitted to interact with panelists or to provide any additional information during the review process. The panelists have three key goals during today's public meeting. First, to discuss applications, points of strength, and areas of improvement for the first time with each other, and to hear alternative points of view for reassessment purposes before making funding recommendations. Each panelist has their own area of expertise, and this is an opportunity for all of them to learn from each other as they think through these applications. Secondly, they are able to offer their thoughts on points of strength and areas for improvement for each application to provide insight into the grant application process, especially for first-time applicants. Thirdly, they are able to pose questions about applications when faced with a lack of clarity so that applicants have writing prompts they need when reapplying or rethinking their approach to the writing process. Prior to the panel meeting, panelists were asked to identify any conflicts of interest with applications. Panelists do not score or discuss applications from applicants with whom they have a conflict. In such instances, a panelist will be removed from the discussion and placed in the waiting room. CultureWorks has initiated a policy of a panelist being asked to review no more than around 15 applications in an effort to ensure they have enough time to read closely, review applicant responses and revise feedback, and follow through on all linked materials. Panel teams will meet again later this week to determine their funding recommendations in a closed session, and then all applicants will learn of the panel team's recommendations by Monday next week via email. These are just the recommendations and will need to be confirmed by MCACD. Today's meeting will proceed as follows. The panel will discuss all the applications in order of a randomly assigned application ID number. The discussion of each application will last up to 10 minutes. At the beginning of each discussion, panelists who have a declared conflict of interest with the applicant will be temporarily moved from the meeting. I will then call on the primary reviewer, who will begin the discussion by presenting the application's major strengths and areas for improvement by application section. Once the primary reviewer has concluded their remarks, I will open the floor to the other panelists to add their comments and discuss. There will be one short break and a longer lunch break during this public session. Panelists use these breaks to review their comments if needed and to make additional notes. Once the panel has discussed all applications, we will enter a short closed session to discuss our next steps, to schedule the meeting, to make funding recommendations. At that time, the audience members will be asked to leave the session. Panelists will have a few days to review their comments, consider the feedback provided by their fellow panelists, and to update and submit their scores on the application rubric. The Artist Opportunity Grant Program of Montgomery County does not award partial grants. Unless there is an ineligible line item, you will receive the full amount or be notified that your application did not receive funding this year. A total of $75,000 is available, and for Team A, that amount is $40,000. The panel teams will reconvene in the closed session to decide on their funding recommendations later this week. These scores and recommendations are then submitted to Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District for approval. Applicants will receive notice on Monday next week as to the panel's recommendation. Those who the panel has determined not to receive funding will have the option of scheduling a one-on-one meeting with me to review written feedback and discuss potential revisions for the next application cycle. And we do hope that you consider that offer, because we do want you to do well. There is not enough funding to fund everyone, even though we may want to, and it is competitive. But we invite you to keep trying and to come back around and meet with me to go through the feedback if you're interested in improving the application for next year. The grant panel's recommendation for funding are subject to final review and approval by the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District Board. Grantees, those who do receive funding, will receive notification of their final funding status in December. Grantees will be required to attend an onboarding session with me to review any contingency plans, the grant requirements, any updates to the budget and financial information, and the grant agreement, as well as the panel's written feedback on the application. During this meeting, each grantee will also review and sign the grant agreement. Pending any required updates, the payments will begin in January. And with that note, we will begin. Our first applicant is applicant 20796. And Sue, you are a primary reviewer. Would you begin our discussion of this first applicant, 796?
Happy to. To confirm, the applicant number is 20796. The one sentence description of the opportunity or project is that the artist is seeking funds to purchase supplies and materials needed to create a large body of drawings, a mix of drawings on paper and on site-specific wall drawing for a solo exhibition at the Robert and Elaine Stein Galleries at Wright State University, scheduled to be on view in late 2026. I felt overall this application was very strong. In particular, I felt that the artist's description of their work, the temporal, impermanent nature of some of the pieces is particularly intriguing to me. The description of the project itself, I think indeed is an excellent opportunity for the artist to build on previous work and to create larger pieces in a more immersive environment that invites discussion and introspection. The fact that there's already an exhibition at Wright State confirmed amplifies the project with exposure to diverse audiences. The budget was very complete and detailed. Overall, I think it's a very strong application. What do the rest of you think?
Mhm. Opening it up to the floor. Thanks, Sue.
Sure. That might have been a little brief, but I wanted to make sure that we had enough time.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Yes, if I may. I agree 100%. This application was very crisp. I feel like it confidently checked all of the boxes. I really love the idea of the site-specific works as well. That's a lot of fun, a great way to engage with community in those environments as well. Um, in terms of areas of improvement, um, I don't know if I had any with this one. Um, Everything was just crystal clear, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I struggled to find an area that I felt needed more development. I thought it was very well written and very well spoken. For me, who is not a visual artist, I really appreciate those communication skills coming to the fore. What about you, Mike?
Mike,
Can't
you're
hear you.
muted.
That's embarrassing.
The joy of Zoom.
You're all welcome to remain unmuted.
I was curious in the area of the public benefits, since the primary exhibit is at Wright State University, would there be an opportunity to engage student artists with the exhibit and having them interact and nurture their interest in the art and see how they respond um, as part of the work? So it seems an opportunity to be immersed in an environment where there's students upcoming through an artistic program that could have some influence on the development of their career as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Mike. He does mention that he will share a perspective through a public artist talk, as well as additional programming at Wright State. So I kind of guessed that that would be a natural outgrowth of the exhibition, that interacting with the student artists would be a natural outgrowth.
That's what I would have thought. And I know it's a lot to ask to have everything with clairvoyance ahead of time, but just to be open to an opportunity for growth, to include others that are just beginning their careers.
Yeah, I think he provided for that with that sentence.
I believe so, yes.
Tim, I meant to announce that you're having technological difficulties, but we appreciate you for making the effort. Can you add your comments here?
I agree with everything that people have been saying, and the only weak spot that I could find, and this is just digging to try to find something, was a little bit more history on the artist's work doing solo exhibitions. If this is their first one, a huge learning curve. But like I said, that's that kind of cooking show when they're just saying you have 2 grains of salt too much, and this is just as a very little detail that I just wish would have been in there. But other than that, like you said, it's a very strong application. The budget looks good. The participation and engagement aspects of the exhibition, as well as having it confirmed already, are all check marks and plus signs. So
I thought the project details, it was a schedule that was definitely achievable. It shows the work spread all the way from January to December, so there's not a indication of a compression or a time when there would be a bottleneck in the flow of the projects. The timeline seemed very smooth and well ordered. My only concern would be if there would be some delay from Wright State's side, since a public exhibit is in December. And so whether or not, I mean, you can't hold the artist responsible for Wright State's change of schedule. But then that was just it.
Right. Can you all say, I want to keep the timeline as kind of a focus of the discussions for these applications as we move forward.
Okay.
I think in part because the grant funds can be spent through all of 2026. Sometimes what happens is people who are further out don't necessarily have the ability to provide as much detail as somebody who has a project that comes into fruition closer, within the first 6 months of the year. And so what you're saying about this application is interesting to me as a difference, just based on kind of what overall I tend to see in these kinds of discussions, which is that this is actually a project that is later in the year, right, in December, but actually does have that kind of fully fleshed out timeline. So
Well,
just go ahead,
there's a
Mike.
perspective too, because in my area of vocal expression, we don't think in terms of 5 to 6 months, but I can understand through the creation of work, this applicant starts creating the new works in February. So it seems to be a very broad, and it seems to be enough time to be able to achieve the intended goals. That's all.
Thanks. So we have a few minutes here. If you all want to continue to discuss, please do, but you might also use this time just to jot kind of additional notes to yourself about things that your fellow panelists have said for when you're reviewing scoring down the road. And then we will pick up with our next applicant in just a couple minutes.
Something I did want to mention, I believe Tim brought up this point, just the idea of so for this exhibition, like where does this fall in line in terms of the artist's career? That definitely can have an impact in terms of what this grant opportunity can support. Is it something that sort of helps to maintain and keep things afloat in terms of activity and progress? Or, is it an opportunity that has a potential to really, catapult, an artist into a new level, or a new career path, maybe. But that was something that I did find myself asking multiple times throughout the reviewing process. So definitely something important to consider.
That
Yeah,
too,
this-
then, sorry, go
That's
ahead.
right. I say, yeah, it seems like this project is more sort of an organic expansion of the artist's current work and vision. And a lot of the projects, grant applications were that kind of thing. And so, yeah, as opposed to being like you say, catapult into something new, and having a little bit more background, a little bit more, history on what the artist has done thus far would have maybe given a little bit more light into that.
And I think there's a
Okay.
certain amount of closure. I can see it or understand it from the artist's perspective. The closure of being able to present your works at your alma mater some 2 decades later gives you a tie back. And that's where I got the thought from involving students, because they themselves could visualize 20 years in their future coming back to their alma mater, and they can actually see somebody coming full circle in their career and project what they might think of themselves in the future.
Thank you, you all. I really
And
appreciate.
one I said one quick question I had about the budget is I want to know what the packing tape is for, the adhesive tape. So I can't wait to go to the exhibit to see what the adhesive tape was used for.
Thank you all. Now you've made it to exactly the 10-minute mark, which I want to say is very rare for a panel to do with the very first application. It usually takes a panel time to warm up, but I loved watching this conversation unfold between the four of you. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our second application, number 20824. And Jamal, you're the primary reviewer for this one. If you could start off our conversation on 824.
Yes, yes. Um, so for application 20824, let's see here. The one sentence description of the opportunity is to attend a 30-day artist residency at Palazzo Monti in, I'm not sure how to pronounce this city. If anybody knows, please feel free to help me out. Is it Brescia?
Brescia? Brescia? I don't know.
But in Italy,
We're going to Italy.
He's
going to
going to
Italy.
Italy.
In 2026, that provides housing and a private studio to develop a bilingual and multicultural family painting series with access to collectors, curators, and press. And so, where I'll start with this application. First off, I really enjoy their work. It's very consistent. I like how it's work that feels very relatable as it depicts, just aspects of everyday life, color palettes, very, very consistent, very nice presentation. Um, I really love the idea of this residency. Artists, many of us find ourselves competing in terms of, our time and energy, you know, and what we're able to set aside for creating in the midst of, just trying to navigate everyday life and, our, day jobs if we have them and, families and things like that. And so the idea of being able to participate in a residency that allows the applicant the time to just focus on the work itself would be an amazing opportunity in Italy, of all places, right? However, if I'm not mistaken, as I scroll down here, I believe this is an application for this opportunity that is in progress, um, with the notification of the outcomes being in December. Um, and so I am definitely rooting for them. I hope this is something that is able to come to fruition. Um, I think it would be very achievable with the funding, of course, to go ahead and make this happen. Um, I think one of the major questions that I had, I was more so on the back end of this, to go through this residency, to, have this experience this time, and then to come home, and just being a little curious about the things that follow and being able to share the work and things like that. I do see here um, that they do intend to have a show in April of 2027. Um, and so I'm not sure if that's concrete or not. So a little certainty there in terms of how that work could be presented would have been ideal. But overall, yeah, I'm just really rooting for them to get this opportunity because that would just be amazing.
Thanks, Jamal. let's go ahead and open it up to the floor.
So one aspect I'll remark, because I believe this candidate did an outstanding job of understanding the public access to their work and actually made use of Dayton Metro Library's programs. And just for the other artists that are listening, it's not that I would be critical, but it's always a question I've asked. Many of the applicants, I think, overlooked the power of Montgomery County Library Systems and its ability to bring public works to the general public at large. And so this applicant did an outstanding job of reaching out to Montgomery County libraries and using it. And I would recommend that other applicants consider that in their proposals to make the free public access, make it something that they can pursue in the future, because it's there it gives a broad exposure to all the people of Montgomery County, which is our primary focus.
I was, it's really hard switching back between looking at the application and looking at the Zoom screen to see who's going to talk next. Sorry about that. I stepped on somebody.
No, it was me calling your name.
Okay. All right. So under the description of the project, there was some language that I wanted to draw to our attention. This work will examine motherhood across 2 homes, Dayton, Ohio, and Italy, where my husband is from, and where both of my children are citizens. I thought that was particularly evocative, along with rendering a bilingual, bicultural family rituals as quiet, painterly dramas. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And as Jamal said, I think this is an excellent opportunity for this artist to maybe not catapult into something new, but to make a significant transition into new subject matter within their style, and to grow their style and their craft from that. And I totally agree with you, Mike, about the public access opportunities through Dayton Metro Libraries. And they've really thought this through as far as the public benefit aspect of the grant is concerned.
I did have a question. In my understanding of the budget seems very clear to be able to support the intended plan, but I didn't see a reference to the residency and room and board costs. And that's fine, because if the applicant is going to bear those costs, it just should be noted that that's a cost share, and it's not disqualifying. It's a question I had looking at the budget. From my time in Europe, residency in any country was never cheap. Not that it has to be specified, but the question was, if it's a cost share, let the applicant take the benefit of being able to say, this is a cost that I'm going to bear, so we understand that all costs were included. And I know it's probably en passant that it was a known cost and it just didn't need to be brought up, since it wasn't going to be funded through the grant.
Yeah, I had that question too, Mike. I was looking at it and going like, no, wait a minute, where, oh, they're not covering the actual trip, the travel, and the actual residency. They're using the funds for supplies, et cetera, et cetera.
Right,
which is, like you said, perfectly their choice as to how they would use the grant money. But I agree, if they would include that in the budget, saying, because there's a column for that, for the artist to say that they're covering that particular cost, it would strengthen the application.
Tim, did you want to add anything? We've got really like just a minute left, but.
Yep. Along those lines, there was a budget line item about traveling to visit family while they're there. And it would have been interesting or strengthened the application if that had been mentioned in the narrative as opposed to a line item. And if they put that line item in, how come the other line items for artists' costs are in there? My big question, I mean, all the stuff you're saying is I agree with, but my big question was, I understand personally why they want to go to Italy to expand their art and explore motherhood, but I didn't understand the artistic value of it. What do they hope as an artist to get out of that? And from my understanding, their paintings tend to be from reference photos. So why do they need to go to Italy to paint as opposed to go to Italy to take pictures of family that they can then bring back? I would just, again, looking at small details, that
Well, Tim,
you guys picked all the strengths up already, was just the why. I understand personally why they want to go to Italy, but I didn't understand artistically what they're going to get out of being there, and the whole line item of, oh, by the way, I'm going to visit family while I'm there, and I'll pay for that out of my pocket, seems to take away from the emphasis of I need to get away and focus in on my artwork. But those were just my thoughts since you guys already picked out the good stuff. So
No, I appreciate this conversation. We are officially out of time, so we're going to move. If there's more to say, please make notes of it because we do want to make sure, and give access to your continued thoughts, to the applicants. But I want to remain on time to give every applicant their due 10 minutes. So we're going to move forward to applicant 20785. And Sue, you are the primary reviewer for 785. If you could start us off, please.
Sure, yes, for 20785. If I can get my scrolling to work here. The one sentence description of the project is to expand and further develop a current body of work for a solo exhibition at Filter Space in Chicago. There were some content from the application that I thought helped in the process of visualizing what this project was about, and understanding their aesthetic. Their work navigates identity structures through representation and comprehension by considering the transitional qualities of existence found within imagery and their adornments. They use this mode of looking to examine how photographic depictions incite differentiation in presence and portrayal through presented context and actuality. That was really thick going for me. It was very evocative and descriptive, but my mind still kind of went, okay, I'm still trying to quite grasp what they're saying there. But I still thought it was, their overall vision is evidently well thought out and well described there. The quality of the project, again, this is a situation where the artist is expanding an existent body of photographic work. And my question is, well, how will it be different from what the artist has displayed previously? Will it be larger? Will it be more multidisciplinary in some way? Will there be additional or different themes or ideas? None of that is actually spoken to in the grant application. And I would have appreciated more of that kind of detail. It seems like the main deal with this opportunity is the ability to exhibit in Chicago, which is obviously a big deal for any artist's career from our region. Obviously, that would be a big a great step for them in their career, and of course, as a Dayton-based artist, Dayton would get that reflection as well, so to speak. I think a little bit more of an outward focus would have been desirable. They mentioned expanded audiences for the work and wider arts-based networks, but specific opportunities in the Dayton area for residents to learn about the work and interact with it would have been good addition to the application. It seemed a little bit too much emphasis on just this is a really great opportunity to expand on my work and exhibit it in Chicago. So yeah, those are my first ideas on it. What is everyone else thinking?
Well, my primary concern was the schedule compression. It was very detailed, but everything has to happen between January and March. And given the timeline for the award of funds from a government entity, I know Ren's grimacing, but the idea that is it possible to get everything done by the exhibit time? I know an artist is fixed by the venue that's offered and it's on April 17th. But my concern is getting everything done in time. And will the artists have enough time to create expressive new works, or will this be a display of previous works? And so that wasn't absolutely clear to me. The other concern I had was I didn't see a venue listed for Montgomery County. And I understand the people of Chicago receives the benefit, but I'm a stickler for details for wanting to see a benefit for the people of Montgomery County. So now I come back to the idea of reminder of the availability of the Montgomery County library system for artists to be able to get their works into the public domain in our county. And I'll leave my comments there.
Thanks, Mike.
Tim or Jamal?
Yes, yes. Sue, you brought up a really great point. I think a lot of times artists get so focused on just the idea of displaying, to the point where it almost becomes this idea of just like, okay, so like there's a process that's developed, and then how do we repeat this process in various locations and or markets, right? And so I would say not only for myself but any other visual artists that are listening to really consider the end game and the evolution of displaying itself can be something that can be very useful. It's really, really important to consider moving forward. I agree with Mike's point as well about, like is there some sort of, local benefit as it pertains to some of the opportunities? Is there something that is to be discovered or learned in Chicago that can be brought back here, perhaps? And so I do think that's important. But I also wanted to note that when I was looking at the applicant's work, I really like how they play around with the displaying of their photography. Um, some of the things that this artist is doing, I haven't seen before. So I just wanted to make note of that and just consider, the possibilities there for photographers in general in terms of how their images can be displayed.
Thanks, Jamal. Tim, you want to close us up on our discussion?
Um,
We're
everything
a
everyone
little
said.
over. Oh, we have a couple minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay. What everyone said, I completely agree with. I would have liked to see a little less emphasis on the venue itself. There's a long history of the filter gallery, which was nice, but I didn't need that much information. And like Jamal and Mike have pointed out, what happens with the work after this? Where does it go after this opportunity is accomplished? And I think that's a piece that's missing for me in this. And also bringing back to Montgomery County, what is the benefit? What experiences? Is there been artists talk about, hey, here's what I learned about being in Chicago? How could that information that the artist discovered in this project could be brought back to support the community within Montgomery County? And that might be a Cultural Works thing, is you start bringing in the artists and have them talk about their experiences
Mhm.
from these grants. So
Right. I like that note. Culture Works is making a note. Um, thank you, everybody, for that discussion. We have one more application to review before we take a short break, and that application is 20819. And Jamal, could you start this discussion for us?
Yes, yes. One second, please, as I reposition my screen here. Okay. And so, yes, again, with applicant ID 20819, the one sentence description of the opportunity. is to travel to England to create work for my first solo museum exhibition in the UK, an exploration of the literary giant and Nobel Peace Prize winner John Steinbeck's relationship with England, and to bring the exhibition to Dayton, Ohio to show in conjunction with regional organizations such as the Dayton Metro Library and statewide Ohio Library System, the International Peace Museum, and the Dayton Art Institute. Okay, so very interesting work. Very, very, very interesting work. I think the opportunity itself, I mean, obviously, a solo museum exhibition in the UK would just be absolutely phenomenal for any artist, right? I like how there is this very significant tie for the artist with John Steinbeck. Um, that is that has some pretty significant appeal to me. I do appreciate the intent to um, to return back to this local setting and provide opportunities for engagement with the work here locally. Um, as we've mentioned, that's something that's super duper important. Um, Give me 1 second here as I scroll. Oh, so something with this uh, with this application, one of the questions that I had, I was just wondering, if there was some documentation of acceptance for this opportunity. I know this one here, the contract that they presented is with the Dana Wiley Gallery. So I'm wondering if that gallery has helped to facilitate this opportunity for the artist. I am unsure there. Um, but the way they're speaking about it is as if that is something that is happening. Um, and then actually, where is there it is. Looking for a timeline here. Um, just looking, having an exhibition that runs from about mid-April to mid-June. So realistically, that gives them looking like from like January to March to create the work for a museum show. I'm curious as to about how many pieces would have to be on display. Um, that becomes really interesting. I'm wondering if anything is set in stone with any of the entities they would like to partner with when they return home. Um, I know the Dayton Art Institute in particular, it can definitely be a challenge um, to have things on display there. They're usually like a year or two out. Um, and so, yeah, just really more so having questions about things on the back end there. But yeah, really intrigued by the work. I'm really interested in the opportunity. Um, yeah, really interested in just in what all has actually been confirmed, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jamal.
I would chime in. I agree with what you're saying there, Jamal. I also kept going back and forth between the artists' examples of the artist's work and the proposed the project itself, and just kind of this is really intriguing. I'm a literature nut myself, so the whole Steinbeck connection was very intriguing to me. But boy, I really want to see it because I can't quite visualize where they're going with it. But I'm sure it's going to be amazing. But on the one thing I wanted to point out is with the grant budget, it focuses a lot on documentation and marketing materials, as well as supplies and materials for the creation, production, and the installation. It's all very detailed, but I kind of wondered why, again, the dollars were not more evenly distributed or attributed to other expenses. Again, as we mentioned with the previous application, the costs of getting there and being there, those kind of costs, the artist is going to foot the bill for those costs, but it is still part of the cost of the entire project, and it would be good to have that reflected in the budget.
So actually, I thought in the artist's description of her career, it shows a broad range of venues and social engagements. So there's a history of being able to
Mm-hmm.
host and complete and document and schedule all of the logistics associated with a venue display. My concern was having a venue overseas. Again, this is the rocket scientist in me going back and saying that the logistics of customs. I mean, there's just so many unknowns when you ship things overseas, they could be held up through inspections, through the lack of a form. So if you're unfamiliar with a venue like that, there's certain risks that I didn't see brought out that could change the outcome simply because of something beyond their control. So I think when you're talking about shipping overseas and shipping it back, there's a lot of logistics that, if you're not experienced, could actually end up biting this timeline and schedule and actually impeding your work. Another question I had was the attached gallery contract stipulates a 50-50 split on all sales of the artwork. And my question is, will these proceeds from the sale of the artwork that was created with the grant have a public benefit to Montgomery County? Will there be a way to turn those funds around and use them, since the funds were derived from taxpayer funds? What's going to be done with the sale proceeds? And maybe this is a logistics question for CultureWorks, Ren, not me. My mind just goes to tax code obligations and money derived from taxpayer funds. That's all.
I want everyone to
That's
know
all.
Mike really is a rocket scientist. That
Yes,
was not
unfortunately.
not a fictional statement, as well as a vocalist.
So there's a dichotomy in my brain.
What you're
So
bringing
sorry.
up are budget questions. Budget questions.
Okay.
Yeah. This one, I think, would need a contingency for the budget, which is permissible, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Tim, did you want to say
So some of
anything?
yep, a couple quick thoughts. This one raised a lot of questions in my mind, some good and some bad. You guys have brought up most of them already. I'm kind of concerned about the validity of this money from Montgomery County being used to support a project internationally. I mean, I understand the prestige to Montgomery County to have an internationally shown artist. Another question I had was the work samples were over 10 years old, and I'd like to see some more recent work samples of what they've been working on, to show where their career has gone from 2014 to the work they might be making for this exhibit. But yeah, my big one is what is the bring back in value to Montgomery County for this opportunity, other than an internationally shown artist in the community and the potential to come back and show it some places in the area. It just seemed like it was all about this opportunity and not about the bigger picture. As Jamal pointed out, you have to look at it as opportunity, as a bigger picture, not just this deadline to have this show opening in this gallery on this date. So
Mhm. We have right now just about 5 minutes before our break starts, and this is one of those moments where I'd kind of like to lens out from any particular application and kind of have a little bit of a discussion about some of the trends you all are already seeing. And one of the things that has come up a few times, one has been budget questions and just representing the costs in the form where there's a column, to show how you're using your own funds to also support your work in addition to the grant. And that could also, just including that information helps make your case, right? You know, um, Montgomery County and Culture Works and the panel like to see that there's an investment in making the project happen beyond just the grant funds. So that's always beneficial. But if we could take a little bit of time to talk about the other issue that's come up a few times, which is public benefit. And I think sometimes, especially for visual artists, and Jamal and Tim, you have a background in this, so please, you know more than me. I'm one of those performance artists where the audience and public benefit is kind of built in, like we see our audience, so we
Right.
see the impact. But I think if you could speak about that aspect of the application, because there's a whole section about public benefit, and yet that's been a common thread in these discussions about how to actually talk about that. Um, yeah.
I mean, did you want us to comment now?
Well, I want to hear from the visual artists first,
Oh, okay.
honestly,
That's
if
fine.
they have things to say. Because I think those, like I said, performance artists like Mike, Sue, and I kind of have it a little easier in that,
Mhm.
the audience is present. Um,
And maybe the application needs to be modified so visual artists have a better understanding of what we're looking for in that section.
mhm.
Um, I mean, I've been following Paul's career for the last year on social media, and you're doing it right. I mean, you're not only making art, but you're working with the community, you're working with the students and kids. I mean, you're all over the place, and your work is your passion, and an outcome of that is the visual stuff that you're presenting. But that's not the entire service you're providing as an artist. And I don't know if it's the application or how visual artists view the world, but there seems to be a big disconnect with public benefit and some of the questions with the answers that we're getting from this group, from the visual
Mhm.
artists, not this group specifically, but from visual artists.
Mm.
Jamal, this is honestly, it's one of the reasons I wanted you on the panel team.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you're so engaged in the community through your work. So are you willing to say a little bit? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Uh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you, Ren, and Tim. I appreciate what you said as well. Thank you. So yes, on the one hand, a great way to offer public benefit is to be able to offer up one's skill set and experiences and learnings to um, just to the community at large, right? Whether it's public art projects, whether it's workshops, being able to engage with and interact with, underserved and underrepresented communities. That becomes a great way to make the work more accessible. Artists, a lot of times, we work in solitude, right? And where the work can just be so personal. It's our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, right? And um, but even within that space, something that can happen in terms of still being able to offer public benefit. A lot of that can also just really be contingent upon the subject matter itself. Are you communicating things in your work that larger audiences can relate to? Can people see themselves in the work? Can they see someone they know in the work? Can they hear themselves in the narrative, right? And they don't necessarily have to look like you for that to happen. And so that becomes a great way to, foster connection just through shared human experience that is being communicated through visual art. And that may be a space that's just more comfortable for some artists, that maybe they don't feel like they're great at teaching or great at, being social with others. So like the work can still do that, but you just have to be really intentional about what you're saying and saying it in a way that other people can also engage with it and find their own connections and interpretations. So,
Okay.
Thank you. That was
We're
well
gonna,
said, Jamal.
it
Yeah.
was beautifully said. We're gonna back around to this discussion. We'll keep it running throughout when we have the pockets of time to do so. But it is 11 o'clock a.m. and we have a short break until 11:15. There we go. Welcome back, everyone. Tim, I know you're in the house. Um, we'll go ahead and get started. We have 7 applications in this portion of the public review. And our first is applicant 20795. And Mike, you are the primary reviewer for this one. So could you get our conversation started on
Sure.
20795?
Okay. Thanks, Ren.
Hmm?
The artist's one-sentence description is to present Divine Blue, a solo exhibition of new textile-based installation work at the Peggy R. McConnell Arts Center in Worthington, accompanied by an artist talk, a hands-on workshop, and lecture that engaged the public in exploring healing, tradition, and cross-cultural spirituality. I found this application very unique, and that the work is a natural step for the applicant's craft and career. Especially exploring the expanded link between art and humanity clearly deepens the applicant's career in comparison to past works, because her history in her past work shows a dedication for a core belief of art as a bridge across cultures and faiths. And I think this is a very unique opportunity to blend an artistic work with the society and community at large, and to try to engage the community in something other than just an artistic display. You actually get people to think and transcend all kinds of cultural and spiritual boundaries. There's a very strong focus on community engagement, although my concern was, my primary concern was it's just in Worthington, Ohio. And again, I say that before, I don't see a venue in Montgomery County as a focus, but I understand it's a month-long engagement, and that shows a dedication to the community, engaging them in more than just a presentation, to actually learning and engagement with the people at the exhibit. So I think there's a very strong public benefit to explore the interplay between her work and the spiritual development of the audience. But one question I did have is, how does the applicant propose to engage the Montgomery County community in the future? I also took a look at the project timeline, and one thing that concerns me is the timing of the venue requires a lot of the work to be done in the November to December time period prior to the grant start. And so with the funding profiles that the works be done as part of the grant funding, my question is, will the works are going to be done before the grant period? Are the costs to reimburse the artistic process of creating the works? I understand it's not something that's done overnight. The dyeing of the cloth, the whole artistic process of creating the work takes time. And given the venue that's proposed, the schedule is so compressed, it needs to preload a lot of the work into 2025. And that's actually what the timeline shows, work done in 2025. So the question is this still within the scope of the boundary of the grant application process? And that was my primary concern. And I'll let the other panelists open up their comments at this time.
Yeah, that was a big concern for me as well, Mike, the timeline.
Yeah, timeline, super interesting. And then also under project details where they describe the opportunity. Looks like in the third paragraph, it says, after more than 20 years of balancing academic leadership with studio and community practice, I am ready to expand the reach of my work beyond Dayton. And so that definitely suggests that, that's where the sights are set, right? And so um, with that seeming to be a lot of the primary intent behind this opportunity, and again, it's already in motion, right?
Right. I agree.
I, I do not, based on the information that we have, I do not necessarily believe that this is uh, an opportunity in which they're looking to, I guess, bring something back, for lack of a better phrase, in terms of things that could enhance this community. Um,
The
so,
primary concern is that the exhibit is in January. So how does that flow with the requirements of the grant that new works be created during the grant time period of 2026? So I'll leave like that administrative question to higher up. So this is just something I caught. I think the project is amazing, but I think the times needs to be shifted 9 months. And I know that's when you had mentioned that earlier, Jamar, that when you're anchored to a venue, you have no flexibility to really do nothing but adapt and create your works to fit the venue. And with a January venue, it seems inconsistent with the grant timeline.
yeah, yeah, and then and again, I guess to your point, going back to the top of the project summary, this opportunity is to create, complete, and show new work, and so, if the work's being created prior, is this opportunity for that portion of it per se? It's a great point. It's a great something to bring up. Absolutely, very important to consider.
I do like that, and I agree with everything that's being said. I had concerns about timeline. I had concerns about the budget being within the grant cycle. I had concerns about it, the validity of it benefiting the Montgomery County area. But I do appreciate that the artist is expanding from, seems like from the work samples, a collaborative work environment and
Mhm.
workshop to exhibiting the work. So I do like that step that they're taking, and applaud them for moving forward in that direction if that's not a direction they've been really advancing before. But yeah, I had the same concerns everyone else has about budget, timeline, and benefit. So
Okay. Um, we'll take a little time here for you all to kind of review. We're a little ahead at this point. We've got like a couple minutes. So let's go ahead and just pause. You all can kind of look ahead to who's coming, maybe make some additional notes, but I will call us to order in about 2 minutes.
I do not recommend the holiday sample of Pepperidge Farm cookies because it is single serving. It's a whole box of single serving. So
Hey,
it's okay to buy them, but do not open them. So I had to move them across my studio so they're not sitting here.
I think that might be the definition of a non sequitur right there. I love it.
Well, we're on pause, so
Yeah, why not? Why not? I wish you could share them, even if they're not meant to be shared. I'd take a cookie right now.
here, what do you want?
Oh, look. Lovely.
Oh, shoot. Always a good time, Tim.
You got to have cookies now and then.
All right, everyone. We have eaten up our time with cookies. The audits is now over. And we are going to move on to our next application, which is number 20820. And Sue, you are our primary reviewer for this applicant. Could you please get us started?
Sure. Okay, so again, this is 20820. The one sentence description of the project is that the artist's practice has recently shifted focus, prompting a need for various supplies such as brushes, paints, supports, including paper, canvas, panels, and stretcher bars, and framing materials, with the ultimate aim of exhibiting the resulting body of larger scale work in an academic venue like a university-run gallery. So I felt like the artistic merit, the vision of the artist was very memorable and insightful. The artist's work and the application itself shows great care in its craft. The concept itself, expanding the initial concept into a larger, more diverse forms, is an excellent next step for this artist to develop his artistic vision. It's a near perfect example of building on existent work and taking it to the next level or sphere. So it's a real good example of that. I think that one of the downfalls of the application was the impact on career and work section was essentially not completed. The application would have been much stronger if that section had been completed. However, much of it may be inferred from other sections in the application, but that particular section was not completed. I'll let everybody else comment on the other stuff as they see fit. So, other thoughts, ideas?
Well, I'll affirm what you had said, Sue. I was concerned when the potential impact was marked as not applicable.
Yeah.
And I can understand where someone might feel that way, but from how we assess the grant process on an equal basis, if there's a rubric that
Yeah.
we may have a feeling that it's applicable and the other people in the venue might feel it's applicable. The fact that the applicant does not feel that, if there's nothing there, we can't provide feedback. So
It seems like we have some definition confusion there, perhaps. Difference
maybe
that maybe the artist didn't quite comprehend what was being asked for there. It needs to be asked in a different way, perhaps.
because it would feel natural to me that if the artist is expanding their work to move in a new direction, that would be a huge impact.
Yeah.
So by nature of the application and the description in the earlier parts, it seems like it addresses that issue, but it wasn't explicitly stated in that section.
Right.
The impression I got was that this is a new discovery of a new technique that the artist has come up with. And they're super excited, but they haven't had time to process what this means to them in their career and their art. And it maybe the timeline was approaching and he just discovered this and said, "Oh, I have this new idea," and all of a sudden there's this grant, I need to apply for it. So that might just be that.
Yeah.
But
Could be.
then to identify a blanket list of brushes and paints and canvases from Blick without identifying why they want 20 different brushes. It just seemed like it seemed like this is a very early on excitement for a project and not developing a larger perspective and plan for it. It's like I understand it because that's how I am with when I have a project and I get something new and exciting. I want all the toys.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
We all do geek out. We do geek out. Jamal, do you want to add anything? As the representative visual artist on the group.
Yeah, I think you all definitely hit the nail on the head. I mean, quite frankly, we need more information, right? I think while a lot of the things that we said do seem plausible, as I, kind of scroll through this application, there are some aspects of this that are pretty well fleshed out, that do have a significant amount of thought.
Mhm.
So to display, a solid level of thinking and explanation in these other areas, and then come to this one section and essentially there's nothing. Um, it's just really, really interesting to me, excuse me. But I will say the work is very interesting. I definitely appreciate the level of care there. I like this idea of introducing this element of probability into the work.
Mhm.
I think that could be a lot of fun. Could be a very fun process.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
For
but
sure.
but yeah, definitely just again, like I said, just needing a bit more information to help us fully understand what even if you don't know what it means to you right now, what could this mean to you?
Hmm.
Even just with having the experience of, I mean, I'm sure this isn't this artist's first time having that sort of moment where it's like, oh, there's this new thing I want to try, right? And so even if you don't know what this could do for you, like, do you have something in your experience that you could possibly refer to give us some sort of insight?
Yeah.
And the statement during the public benefit portion, when the applicant states, I hope to find exhibition opportunities, and I understand that,
Yeah.
but it seems to affirm what you had said, Jamal, about, and Tim, that they're in the early stages of concept formulation and not everything is clearly defined yet. And so, since they haven't defined the entire plan, being able to answer the specific questions that we ask in the grant application are going to be very difficult.
Right. And using that mindset of the potential impact is saying, I don't know where this is going yet, but I'm excited by it. And what I've discovered in the past when I've done this is, I mean, you don't
Right.
have to know the exact where you're going to end up, but to understand that that's the state you're in and you've been in that state before would have helped, um
Yeah.
not justify,
Yeah.
but explain the excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say on the administrative capability side, the cover page of the budget template was left blank, and the tab B appears to be incomplete, perhaps, not sure. The artist states he's asking for 4,000, but there's only a 2370 in expenses noted. So perhaps this was a rushed process for him.
But as we pointed out, it's an exciting direction.
It
And
is.
Right.
and the sample work that was put in there for this type of project was really cool. So I like where the artist has been and where they're going. Um, and I want them to keep doing this. I don't want them to take our comments as a commentary on their artwork, but
No,
on
I'm intrigued
their,
by it. Yeah. I'm intrigued by what the artist proposes to do. I'd like to see the work and see
yeah.
how it flows and how it represents.
Absolutely.
Thanks, you all. Do you feel good about that discussion? Are we
Yeah,
ready to move? We're ready. Okay.
I think so. If you guys are.
We're a little ahead, but I know that the next artist is in the room, so we're going to move forward with applicant 20782. And Jamal, you're the primary for this application. Could you begin our discussion for applicant 782, please?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so again, this is application 20782. One sentence description for this opportunity. I will create a new multimedia body of work for an upcoming solo exhibition at Blue House Arts in Dayton with a community workshop inspired by the project. Um, let me see where would I like to start here. Uh, the first thing I would like to say is I think this opportunity is great for this applicant, given the fact that they are intentionally seeking to be more engaged here locally, as someone that has relocated within the past few years or so. So I definitely appreciate the effort and the intentionality behind that. I think that their work is definitely interesting. They've put together some compositions that I don't think I've seen before. Some things I definitely have some questions about, but in a good way. They're making me think, right? Um, I think this is an opportunity that feels very achievable. Um, I appreciate the community workshop aspect of it. Um, just a great way to be able to just really, you know, rope in community beyond, just in engaging with work that may be displayed on walls. Um, I think, um, sorry, one second here as I scroll again.
It is a process.
Uh, so let's see here, body of work being created over a period of roughly 6 months from September
Mhm.
through March of 26. I think that's reasonable. Um, the work that they're making doesn't appear to be of a, significantly large scale. So I think that is fine. I like the idea of incorporating a performative aspect with a dancer for something later on in 2026. Um, Yeah, there's just some really, really interesting pieces here that I'd like to see come together. Um, I'm looking at the timeline here again. Um, it kind of jumps around a bit. That's interesting. I'm wondering if this is accurate in terms of, so for example, like there's some things here. We're talking about like March of 2026, October 2026, December 2026, and it jumps, or then it goes backwards to like January, February, March. So I'm wondering if that's the way it was intended, or if there was possibly an error there. Um, we have the letter of invitation. So the show is happening. Um, so that is great. Yeah, just lots of really interesting pieces that I genuinely would have interest in seeing come together. And again, I do appreciate the intentionality behind wanting to just really, really engage with our community here. So,
Thanks, Jamal. Let's open it up to the floor for 782.
I had some questions, and I'm not quite sure if it's my interpretation of the project timeline. The first statement is the body of work will be created over a period of roughly 6 months, September through March of 2026. So I interpret September through March of September of 2025. And then I think the project blends different media together, and getting them to blend together on a consistent schedule seems to be quite a challenge. And in December 26th, there's rehearsal on stage. And then it talks about costume and live recording in January of 2026. So am I missing something in the project description of the timeline, or the dates seem inconsistent?
I think the years are not quite right. So the question is, has the work already begun, or are they not going to start it until late 2026? And then those January, February dates and March dates that we see are actually 27, which puts it out of the grant timeline, the grant year. So yeah, I think we definitely need to get that timeline cleared up to be able to interpret, review the application completely.
Right. Honestly, to be blunt, it seemed like there was a lot going on, and it would be natural to be concerned about compression. But it seems like the timeline, the way the dates are laid out, if you take them, the dates are accurate, would be impossible. So you're right. There's some
Right.
2025s and 2027s that I wouldn't want to infer those changes or those
Right.
dates.
Yeah,
There would have to be a contingency. There would
Yeah.
have to be a contingency because the grant funds can only, it's not just that you use the funds in 2026. They can only fund things that take place or are being worked on
Right.
within 2026. So that would have to be a contingency plan moving forward with this application. Sorry, Tim. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure we were all clear on that.
Yeah, because it's either stuff's happening now for a March 2026 event, or stuff is happening late 2026 with a 2027 event. And either case, like you said, it's not fitting within the scope and guidelines of the grant. So
Is
yeah,
it possible for, go ahead, Tim.
I say, because I also had concerns about the timeline. It seems very aggressive with a lot of details missing, like having potentially filming in a historic theater, but no real details about our communications with what where they're targeting. And to be filming, editing, and coordinating with the dancer who is again not identified with communications for a March opening. It just seems like there's a lot of questions about pieces. And I know that, I mean, I work that way as well. I mean, just kind of things just kind of start coming together. But if you're asking for grant money, it needs to be a bit more clearly defined. And I didn't need as much information about the venue. I wanted more information about the project. So those were just my thoughts.
A question for you, Ren. We've had a few situations where the work is getting ready to start in like November, December time frame with the exhibition or whatever it is happening in the 2026 calendar year. Is that permissible within the grant guidelines that the work has already begun or will begin before 2026 starts?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is part of the reason why the budgets are so important. Because when you're describing the budget, one of the things that you can address in the narrative section, for example, is the grant request is for these activities or these materials that we will be needing in the year 2026 so that it becomes clear. And then that would be reflected in the form as well, right? So that it becomes really clear to the panel, to Montgomery County and to Culture Works, that the funds are only being used in the year of 2026. Because if you are looking for funding, for example, for an exhibit that's going to take place in March of 2027, then you should be applying for the 2027 Artist Opportunity Grant, right? Not this one. So that's really important. And I think sometimes applicants don't quite realize the importance of that. However, it is okay if the grant is for new work, right? But if you're working on something and we're funding something that starts January 2026, then yes, it qualifies, even if it's part of a series that you've already begun. It's just you can't back pay yourself into artwork that you've started already, right? It can only be used to fund the work you are completing in the year 2026. The end. I mean,
got it.
It's a hard line.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about,
that's a legal issue. That is a legal issue. Yeah.
Because I've been on the grant writing and the grant review sides on lots of things, and one thing that comes up frequently is project schedules don't always line up with grant cycles.
Right.
So they might have been working on this project for 2 years, and the fact that it's spanning 2 calendar years, but the grant is only for 1 calendar year, it's
Mhm.
it's tough to have to hold them accountable for these guidelines when they're looking at a bigger scope for their project and their career. So
Right.
Right.
That really is one of the tricky things with a grant, but it's a legal issue even for the county, right? Because they're on a fiscal year and for their own budgeting purposes, they have to end things December. Right? I mean, they have to be able to accurately show their own budget as well. So that it's a it's really important issue with grant funding. So thank you for all of you for that opportunity to kind of clarify something for our grant writers who are in the room and listening. Any other final thoughts on applicant 782 before we move to the next one? It's that time. Okay. So at this time, we will shift our focus to applicant 20809. And Mike, you're our primary reviewer for 809. If you could
Okay.
start us off, please.
Sure. For grant 20809, it represents professional development. The one sentence description is to travel to Narni, Italy, where I will attend the In Tessere Mosaic School by Tiziana Modini. I won't say I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing all of this incorrectly. To develop my mosaic skills by learning historic processes from master mosaicists. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Mosaists.
you got half the words right.
Oh my gosh.
Mosaicists.
At least it wasn't in Latin.
Mosaicists.
Overall, I mean, I felt that this was a very compelling and unified statement of dedication to her career and craft. This is clearly an opportunity to take a next step, but the artist in her history describes a legacy of love of craft, dedication to the community, and a really strong commitment to growth and learning. And this represents a huge learning opportunity. It'll clearly deepen her craft and improve her skills. And she talks about how she's going to bring those skills back to the Dayton community. So you see an inherent potential impact. Sometimes you see a learning trip like this for artist expression, but that also increases their skill set to have them have a potential to contribute more in the future through their existing work. And a lot of that can't necessarily be specified ahead of time. It's like an intangible. But clearly there's a dedication to make significant steps to develop components missing in her craft of dealing with mosaics. For the public benefit, what I said was she clearly demonstrates and documents a past professional dedication to the continuity of her craft through the Mosaic Institute here in Dayton, and that this will further have the impact of improving and expand the body of work that she can accomplish through the community and provide what she learns as a skill set to others. I thought that let me scroll down, sorry. I thought that the plan was well conceived and the workflow was fluid. It seemed to be sufficient for all of the time allotted. It seemed to flow without any gaps or inconsistencies. And the budget was detailed and consistent with the flow plan. And any cost shares were clearly specified, although I did question the costs allocated for foreign lodging. Again, it's an issue of, I believe it was $100 a night, and I didn't think that you could stay anywhere in Italy for $100 a night. I don't think you could
hostel.
Well, okay, there's always that possibility.
Artists are pros at being cheap. We're scrappers.
No, but I think this is a unique opportunity for an artist who has a clear dedication to the community to have an intrinsic public benefit of being able to bring the improvements that come from the education to that same community that there's already a documented history of engagement.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Sorry I interrupted, really.
Oh, no, that's okay.
We'll go ahead and open it up to the floor. So,
Yeah, so one thing I want to say about this application, very, the word that comes to mind for me with this is trust. Um, I believe everything that's said here, you know.
mm,
Um, there's just so
mm,
much information given to support um, the applicant's vision, uh, which I can really appreciate. It seems like they have enough experience within their craft to know, or, but yes, I'll say, yeah, just having enough experience to know that this is a very logical and necessary next step. Um, yeah, really, 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 really crisp. Um, Impressive, really.
It could be my lack of knowledge in mosaics, but I wondered if creating three mosaic art pieces in 9 days of instruction over a 2 week time period, in 2 weeks to create three pieces. I guess it depends on their size. Um, but I would thought perhaps the timeline might be a little bit ambitious. But yeah, overall, I think it's a strong application with a really logical next step, bringing it all back to Dayton, a really strong tie to the Montgomery County area. Um,
And I
yeah,
think, Sue, to, to further your comment, I think by immersion, it gives you time to compress a normal creative schedule by going over
okay.
to a place of excellence and immersing yourself. This has been a common theme in several of the applications where the artist puts themselves in an environment where the creativity can be come out naturally and unimpeded by the daily distractions of life, to be honest.
Right.
that's
Yeah,
one of
that
my
makes sense.
favorite.
Thank you for that.
It's one of my favorite words, immersion. I love it. It really is a favorite word of mine. I love it.
And I think that addresses I'll go ahead and say it because I've been holding on to it for like 45 minutes. The comment Tim made earlier about wondering why an artist would go to a particular venue in order to create their work. And I think like I just said, it's the immersion. It's I could say I could sing a Mozart song here, but to go to Austria and sing it is completely different to me. And somebody might say, well, what does it matter where you sing? It does, because it inspires you to be immersed in the history and the excellence of where the art form originates. And I think that ties into what the applicant proposes here.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone's been saying. I thought this was a very strong and compelling application. I did like that in the communications with the workshop, the first workshop was a 5 day, but the budget said 3 day, and they actually explained that variation to understand that we would have that question and bring that up and explain it to us before we can dwell on it was nice. But with all the details around there, as Mike pointed out, where did the quote, the idea for $100 a night come from? Where are some communications about or information about where they're planning on staying to show that cost? But that's just, again, that's the 2 grains of salt as opposed to a boulder. So
The only concern that I had was in the public benefit, the statement that this knowledge that the artist acquires may open new doors for collaboration. I understand that statement, but I would like to have seen a more positive, broad-reaching plan for Montgomery County. I understand through the Mosaic Institute that that's where the works will be primarily highlighted. but does everybody know about the Mosaic Institute? And this is a comment that I'll have about many of the grants where they pick a particular venue, and me with my background may not ever know about some of these venues, and so I miss an opportunity. Is there a way to get information out to the public to know of the existence of this work? It's one thing for the artist to have a particular venue in mind and to be focused on that venue, but will everybody in general know about it? Even though it may be known to the artistic community, it may not be known to the community at large of Montgomery County.
And this might be a question to Ren and CultureWorks. This is artists going to explore advancing their skills and techniques as an artist, but it's also going to benefit an organization in town. And can that organization now apply for an organizational grant to do something similar? So is there a risk of somebody trying to get money from both directions? I'm not saying this person is, but this brings up that potential.
I think that the grants are, first off, I think with the Mosaic Institute, that is an educational and community engaged organization that does public art. And so the ask would be really different.
Okay.
The ask would be really different.
Because I'm not picking on them particularly, because there are other
but I
groups doing this. Yeah.
I do hear what you're saying. And the answer is simply that is something that we watch for.
Okay.
Because you cannot, very similar to, for example, two artists who want to collaborate can't apply for artist opportunity grant funds separately for the same project, right? Like, we're not going to double fund it because you're working together. That's the rule. That rule also applies with SPG and AOG. You can't double dip from the county, right? But it would have to be different project. So
okay.
Yeah, but because this is a professionalization opportunity, there's not really a risk of that.
Oh, I agree. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, for this artist, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
It was more of a this level question than the specific grant or this application question.
I got you. Okay. We are gonna move on to our next applicant, which is applicant 20794. And Sue, you're our primary reviewer for 794. If you could start us off, please.
Sure. The one sentence description in the application is to attend a workshop at Penland School of Craft in North Carolina, where the artist will learn wet plate photography and expand her practice in alternative photographic processes to create a new body of work. And I thought this whole application was not only artistically interesting, but it's well written and quite complete. Exploring this historical photographic method, I think will give the artist and hence the community that they bring it back to access to a new way of viewing, not just photography, but art itself. And I really think, I thought all the sections were quite strong, from my perspective. The budget seemed pretty complete. The timeline seemed pretty reasonable to me. That's my intro, so to speak. What observations do my fellow panelists have?
Well, again, I agree with everything that you said about it being an exceptionally strong proposal. I thought specifically that the artist has, and Jamal indicated this before, reading it and seeing and reading about her background and her commitment to public engagement, it really gave me a trust of everything that I was reading. And I don't if that's the right word, but that's the feeling. I didn't have a lot of questions. I just went with the flow
Right.
and was able to understand clearly there didn't seem to be any inconsistencies in the plan or the dedication, even the public engagement. I mean, the artist proposes to learn a new technique and explicitly states how she's going to share it with the community, but she already has a history of doing that with her previous works. And so you see how this has a potential for just blossoming into an unknown public benefit. But we talked about this. It doesn't require a specificity because intuitively I just feel that this is a natural flow of the intended proposal. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
The work is beautiful. The work is beautiful. It's well presented, um, very strong, very professional looking. Um, I will echo similar sentiments. Very, very strong application. It's crisp. They do a really good job of answering all the questions effectively and in full. Um, I think I just saw something here that raises a bit of a question for me, if I can find it here as I scroll around. Uh, okay, so the workshop is in July, which is great. 2 weeks, summertime in North Carolina. I'm sure that'd be amazing. Um, but here at the end of the timeline, October through November of 2026, it speaks about a final exhibition. I'm not sure if that was something, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if that was something that was mentioned or it seems set in stone or concrete in some way.
I don't think so. I think that's a good point, Jamal. Very often, that final exhibition is not necessarily in concrete yet.
Maybe outside of that, yeah, just really, really cool work.
It's
Really,
cool.
really cool. Really good stuff.
So I have to admit, I have my master's of fine art in photography, and I love alternative processes, and I taught alternative processes classes for years. And so seeing what this artist is doing and the path they're following and the wet plate collodion is a natural advancement and growth for what they've been doing. It is a different skill set than the cyanotypes they've been doing. After looking at the Penland website, I'm ready to go there and live there. I want to take every one of their workshops. I did not see this one listed on their website though. The one I did not see a wet plate collodion workshop in July, so I was kind of curious about that.
Hmm.
Um, and in the public benefit, the artist keeps mentioning as an educator, but I didn't see any information about how they're an educator, whether they're doing workshops, whether they're a teacher or instructor somewhere. They just kept saying as an educator, which is fine to view yourself as an educator, but if you keep saying that, I want some meat on those bones as to
Mhm.
how where you're taking this information and expanding it. But yeah, it's the Sanotype work that's on their website is wonderful. Um, to pull off that level of detail in Sanotype is difficult. Wet plate is a challenge. It'll be interesting to see. I was missing information on the artist and how they're going to do wet plate once they leave the workshop because you need very specific equipment and
Hmm.
chemicals to pull off wet plate collodion and different type of facility. I mean, you can do Sanotypes anywhere out in the field. Wet plate, you need a dark room. You need very dangerous chemicals. It's a more complicated process. And I would like to have seen how they plan on bringing that skill set back, and acquiring and using those equipment necessary to pull off wet plate collodion in Dayton.
I'm
Thanks for that
actually,
insight.
yeah, actually really valuing that commentary because what it highlights, I think, for every artist, regardless of genre, is how little people outside of your art form know about your practice. you know.
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about wanting a proposal to be descriptive and detailed, that's, don't take your own knowledge for granted. Share the wealth of it, because just because you have artists on the panel doesn't mean they have the same knowledge as you. Yeah.
I will
So,
point out, Tim, to your comments, in her background, she talks about student teaching at Centerville High School, and she talks about her dual role as an artist and an educator. So
Okay,
I took
I
that
missed
on
I missed
to
that. Thank
indicate
you.
that she's an active educator.
Okay, thank you. I missed that.
That's good.
Then I take that back then.
That's okay.
thanks, everybody. Are we good with this discussion? We're ready to
Yeah.
move? Okay, all right.
Ren, I need to ask a quick question. Does my display seem normal? What happens is my computer, I think, is overheating, and I'm starting to get a dual image of every display.
Oh,
I mean, it
yeah.
still works. I can still see people and I can still talk and communicate. It's just that the vision I get can't be improved by my reading glasses. So I didn't know if there's
Everything looks normal on our end.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
All right. I'll let you know if we start seeing 3 of you.
Gary.
You still only get one vote, though.
You'll only get one vote. Let's move on to our next application, which is applicant 20812. And Mike,
Give me
all
30
3
seconds.
of you are the primary reviewer
I need
for
to pull up.
applicant 20812.
And I need to pull it up. Sorry about that. I was too
No,
busy
you're
yapping
fine.
and
You're
not
fine.
focusing.
You're fine.
Okay. This is for application 20812. The one sentence description is to travel to Brooklyn, New York for a one-on-one workshops, a secret Risso club, develop new rissograph prints for exhibition at OKO Studios in Dayton, and build the skills to eventually offer rissograph services and teach workshops locally. So this represents another immersion proposal where the artist proposes to go to a center of excellence to learn, I believe it's a four-color poster technique to a location in Brooklyn. And this is an opportunity again for the artist to immerse and pick up a skill and trade to augment and develop her craft, and then come back and share that through the community here in Dayton. And through the description, the artist does exhibit a commitment to her craft, includes the founding of a local business to further and expand her works through exhibits, collaboration, and publication of zines. And so I thought that the opportunity is centered on professional enhancement and training in order to bring back a new technique. I did have some, let's see, let me read this. My question for public benefit centered about, again, the artists having a particular venue in mind, but not necessarily being able to let others who are unfamiliar with that venue know about it. And so how far does this expand into the public domain of people being able to actually see the results of the work? How will the newly learned techniques that the artist learns come back and reach the Montgomery County at large? How might the artist raise awareness of the local existence of this new artistic process? So I didn't see that in the plan. That the timelines seemed to be focused on the training, and the workflow and budget seem to be consistent and have sufficient schedule flexibility. But my concern was that if the focus of the enhanced technique is to enhance a local business opportunity that is established in Dayton, how does that increased knowledge get to the public at large? And I think this is where we've talked about the focus of the venue and the focus of the training may overshadow the ability to be able to share that with the community at large.
Okay.
I think that's a great point, Mike. And then even as I jump back in here and I look at the timeline and things, there are other applicants that did mention like community workshops and artist talks and then things like that to go along with their exhibition opportunities to be able to, engage community further and be able to share information and things like that. I don't believe I see anything in that regard in this application. Um, but I will say I think the work that they do is very interesting. It's very striking. Um, like I feel like the kind of work they do, um, uh, it almost makes me like create an image in my head of what they look like based on the work that they're making. It's really interesting. There's a lot of personality. That's probably the best way I can
Mm.
describe. Um, but yeah, I like the opportunity. I think it's really cool. Um, I'm not uh, very familiar with the risograph um, media or process. Um, it's definitely intriguing. And I think also to Mike's point, it is something I would like to know more about. And so, how do we make it to where people that aren't familiar are able to gain a better understanding as a result of what they come back with?
And I think, Ren, that's a common theme that we've expressed before is maybe how do we actually give positive enough feedback to have the applicants think beyond the immediate work and the immediate venue of how to actually get the word of such works to somebody like me who's in a different artistic field. Again, jumping back to the idea of the library system, at least putting up posters that the venues exist and that this artwork exists, and trying to establish interest in the community at large, and not knowing the one or two minds you might touch and set on a different path.
Yeah. I thought that when I was looking at the budget, that the printing costs for only, I mean, I appreciate there were marketing costs in there but it was only planning on printing, I think, 80 copies of the zine. And I was like, oh, all of this work and all this for just only 80 copies and where are they going to be picked up? And, again, like you were saying, Mike, how to broaden the distribution. I would love to see that. I would love to see a broader outreach effort to make this art form available and accessible to those who might not come across it normally.
I think this is another case where I know too much. I'm very familiar with the RISO technology and what's involved and how it works and how it's used. It definitely falls well within this artist's working within the zine community and zine culture. RISO is definitely falls well within that. It's a imperfect printing process from Japan with using old out-of-date printers that were made specifically for this. It's imperfect. It's really cool. It makes amazing stuff. So I wasn't concerned about the 80 copies for the
Okay.
price because it is a pricey technique and limited equipment availability. So again, I think it's a natural fit for where the artist is working within design and zine culture and the grassroots gallery space that they're working on and creating the community of. It definitely falls well within that technology falls well within that. Um, I didn't see any major flags, um, other than information about acceptance into the workshop would have having a letter saying you've applied, we've accepted you, we welcome you to attend our workshop would have helped strengthen it. Otherwise, it's all a contingency on if you get the grant and then you apply and get in. Um, that wasn't really covered in there, but I mean that's a lot of what ifing. But I think that's something that we've talked about across multiple applications is there's a lot of what ifs, and I don't know if the application needs to be adjusted for taking the artist through a what if scenario. Um, but yeah, I think this is a case where I know too much, which is interesting hearing your conversations as outsiders to this technology and this community. To me, it was a natural fit. It seems obvious, and to bring that type of technology to Dayton, I think would greatly expand um, the DIY artists community in Dayton. So,
Okay. Well, thanks for that insight.
And this is part of the reason why we have time for you all to actually think, about what other people have to say at the panel with different levels and areas of expertise. At the same time, it's been a consistent thread, I think, throughout our discussions of not taking your details for granted, and your knowledge for granted. You know, yeah, yeah. Um, why you need the brushes you need. That kind of, I mean, it seems like not a question. You don't hear that as a question when you already know the answer, right? And that's part of the difficulty with grant writing, right? Is anticipating the questions the panel is going to have. So, yeah. I want to thank all of you for the review of that application. We're going to move on to our last application before a lunch break, and that is application 20823. And Jamal, you're the primary reviewer for this one. Could you get us started, please? 20823.
Yes. And so for this applicant, the one sentence description is to self-publish a photo book titled A Boy and His Bike, a self-published photo book and documentary project that captures the stories, personalities, and diverse motivations of BMX riders in Dayton and the surrounding areas, offering an intimate look at the people behind the sport. Okay, so this idea, the subject matter for this project was very interesting to me. Um, I like the idea of being able to raise awareness around a culture that exists locally, um, that many people may not be privy to, myself included. It's something that I paid attention to in like my pre-adolescent and adolescent years, but here currently in the city of Dayton, no less, it is something I have virtually no knowledge on. And so very, very interesting to bring awareness to this and give people a bit of an inside look into this community through photography. Something that was interesting to me, as I looked at the examples of the artist's work, um, so there were some photos um, for the early aspects of this process, where we saw imagery of, people in the BMX community, but they feel a bit more, personal, a bit more candid, if you will. But then, the artist also provided a link to their website, where we see some work that I think is a bit more commercial, as well as some other personal work as well. And I don't know if you all noticed this as well, and I would encourage you to bring up both links on your screens. But there's quite a difference between the work on the artist's website and the work, these samples that are being proposed for the project in question. Like I spent a good chunk of time going back and forth between both sets of imagery because at first I'm like, is this even the same photographer? And so that was just really, really interesting to me because I just would want to make sure that the same level of care for this personal and commercial work is being had for the work that is to be included in this project as well. And maybe these are photos that haven't been edited yet or, things like that. Obviously, it can be a pretty significant process in terms of getting, photo imagery ready to be presented the way that an artist intends. But that was something that I just was really going back and forth with for a while. But overall, I do think it's a really, really cool opportunity. Something about having your work in print. I don't quite have the words to describe necessarily why that can be so important. Um, but it is, and I feel like it's something that can help with obviously like marketing and promotion. It helps to, legitimize artists because obviously print work is expensive, right? So, so it's like to have your work shown in that way definitely helps to provide a certain sense of legitimacy. But yeah, really interesting overall. I am curious as I go to the timeline here. Again, as someone that doesn't primarily work in photography, um, I think January to September of 2026. I think that's definitely great for, documenting and capturing, a fair amount of imagery. But then there's 2 months here for the editing phase. I'm wondering if that's enough, for approximately, 50 to 70, polished images. Um, but I do like the idea a lot. I really do.
Thanks, Jamal. Let's open it up to the floor.
I had a
Um, Go ahead, Mike.
proposal. Oh, sorry. A proposal or a question to ask. The artist talks about prioritizing atmosphere and feelings over simple action for the photos. And I was wondering, would it be possible to include statements from some of the subjects bring in the humanity of the subjects that he's photographing and presenting in his works? So he talks about a blend of emotions, and how about emotions from the side of the subjects? What are they thinking? What do they feel from the sport? What are the emotions that they have while they're actually competing or biking? Just a question more for the artist.
I had a question about the budget. I think the entirety of the budget was for printing, and wasn't going to yield a very large number of these photo books. And as you've already stated, photo books are probably pretty expensive to produce. But I just wondered if there were other expenses with this project that the artist planned to cover by himself. And could those be listed to again show the more full scope of the project? And again, if there are other ways of distribution that would get the information out to and the artwork out to for a larger audience, and I'm not sure what those might be, but there are some other gift shop type arts related gift shop type locations around at least the Dayton community that might be interested in having copies of it for sale. So anyway, all that work, I want more people to see it.
I did have a question that I know I've asked before. the works as a result of this grant are going to be held up for public sale. What's the requirement on the funds earned from those sales? Does that have to come back to the public benefit? And I don't know if that's a question that can be answered now. Jamal brought up something that I thought was significant, and the way I expressed it is schedule compression. The editing during September and November, but then relying on the production and printing of the books and distribution of the books, it's a significant part of the outreach, but it's all compressed into the month of December, which in any commercial venues, December is their toughest month because all of the holiday works and people wanting to get things printed in time. Does this represent a risk of, can the timeline be moved back so that the editing is occurring more in the August timeframe and the publication and distribution is fall instead of leaving it right to the last month of the grant? That's all.
Mhm.
I do appreciate that they're using film for this. Being a film photographer, I think that'd be a great way to add the grit of this community and culture. They do mention in the budget $500 for film and $500 for paper, but then if the project exceeds $5,000, they make the comment, all associated production costs, including film, chemicals, and paper, will be funded out of pocket. I don't know if that's because if they exceed the $5,000, then they'll start taking the money from the film and paper part of the budget of their budget and take that out of their pocket. I'd hate to see this artist taking money out of their pocket for this project. I did have some concerns about their experience with putting books together because, like we said, it's finding the right images, is sequencing them. I would love to see some narrative in there and interviews or comments from the BMX writers. At first, I loved the title, "The Boy and His Bike," because I was thinking, oh, this is like a kid's book, but it's really something else. But now I want to see volume 2, which is a girl and her bike, because the BMX community isn't just, and I think it's male dominated, but it's not male exclusive. So I want to see volume 2 in next year's artist AOG for volume 2 of this. So
Sue and I say thank you. Any other comments for applicant 20823?
Well, I'll just expand upon what's the question that Sue asked about getting the books out. My one comment that comes to mind is if there's a cost associated with the distribution of the book, it sets up an economic barrier for some people to have access to the works. So again, Sue had already brought it up. Can the books be distributed freely by Montgomery County? Can they be put in a catalog to be in electronic form that somebody could download the book? These are things I don't know, but I presume the artist community is aware of these venues. I know I'm asking questions of which I have no knowledge, and I don't want it to be a detriment to the proposal process for any application.
And one thing I think would have helped strengthen it was a example of, are there lots of books of this topic in the community already? And if so, what are the strengths and weaknesses? Or is this something completely new within a BMXer doing a BMX book on bikes? Is that unique and special and new? I'd like some market survey, I guess, is the executive summary.
Thanks, you all. This has been the longest portion of the review with 7 applications. Do we want to go back just briefly before we start our lunch to think about kind of the comment? Before the last break, we talked about public benefit as a common thread and how to articulate that, particularly as a visual artist. And it's been interesting to kind of hear you all review applications where the artist is associated with a community arts organization, whether it's arts education or public art, where they're going to learn this skill and bring it back, where it's kind of built in. Jamal, similarly, to what we've talked about with you at that beginning. But the other common thread that kind of came out more so this round, this section of the public review, had to do really with just the questions you all have because you don't know the craft, you're not familiar with the craft, and how to help the artists hear questions that when they already know the answer, I think maybe kind of the art of grant making. When you think about how an application actually asks its questions.
Mhm.
And it's difficult. I'm just speaking as a grant maker right now. Sorry, I realize now that this is more of a riff than a request for conversation. But it's difficult because you have to ask the questions in a way that include every art form. So you can't be specific with the artists about what questions you ask. And you don't have the specific terms of what equipment they're using, for example, until you read the application, because I won't have heard of half the equipment that they're using, right? I don't even know which brush to pick, as a painter. I mean, I'm a theater person, right? So you don't even necessarily have the knowledge to ask the pointed, specific question that a panel so desperately wants to have answered. And I feel like that really is kind of where sometimes, I don't want to say miscommunications, but a lack of clarity, happens both for the applicant as far as what do you actually need me to say so that you have answers to your questions, and the panel, which is we really need more information and detail to be able to make the best decision for you, and so I want us to just kind of think about that and hold that, and maybe come back to it after we've had a lunch.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
All right.
one of the topics you always bring up with grant writers is have someone who is outside your field
Yes.
the grant.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
having a performing artist have their grant
Absolutely.
by a visual artist and having them swap and say, okay,
Yeah.
I don't understand this.
No, absolutely. And that is a recommendation, but that doesn't mean that the person outside of the art form that you have reading the application is thinking like a panelist.
Right. We don't want a mother who's like,
Right.
oh, that's a wonderful
Yeah.
job, honey. You did a great job.
Right.
You need someone like Mike who's like, I need the details.
Yeah.
How are you going
Mhm.
to launch this rocket? I need to know.
Well, what's kind of cool though is that this particular panel, with having two visual artists with with your perspectives, Tim and Jamal, and then Mike and I are more about public benefit and the budget, because that's what we can speak to from our experience. That's what's
Yep.
clearer
Right.
to us. We can't evaluate their artistic vision. We don't have, only cursory way can I say that I evaluate someone's artistic vision,
Right.
Okay, you've got one, great, more than that, I can't, it's not up to me what your artistic vision is. It's not up to me to evaluate the quality of it, more
Right.
that it exists and it's been
Yes.
thought out in some way, and that I have a glimmer of understanding it.
Right.
So I think the balance on this particular panel, I think, has been great. It's like we have these questions, and then Tim chimes in and says, "Oh, here," and we're like, "Oh, okay, now I get it."
But like you said, that should have been in the grant. Because whenever I write a grant, I always say, what questions are they going to have that I have an answer already? And
Yeah.
so, but that's also coming from the experience of being a grant
That's
panelist.
being an experienced grant writer.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Sue, I appreciated what you said too about all you really have to go on for the vision, right? To appreciate the vision is what they say in the application. That's what you've
Right.
got, you know. And I think that's really important too for applicants to appreciate that if somebody from outside your art form um, is thinking through your application, all they've got is what you tell them. That's it. Yeah. Thank you all. I really value these discussions. I learn things from these discussions. We 20800 with you three, I think. So applicant 20800 and Jamal, you are the primary reviewer here. If you could get us started, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, yes. 1 second here.
And welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful lunch.
All right, all right. So again, this is application number 20800. So for the description of the opportunity, so this artist is wanting to travel to Bornholm, Denmark, also known as the Island of Makers, where they will use lens-based imagery, the photographic process of cyanotype, and found objects or materials to create a series of collages that explore wonder, as well as a free zine that encourages people to look for, find, and share beauty in the banal, which will be distributed in public spaces in Dayton, Ohio. Okay, so first, I just had it here. I was pulling up their work again. There we go. Boom. Um, the work is really interesting. I like this mixed media approach. Um, the wood framing works presentation is really solid. Some very interesting compositions there. Um, it seems fun, even. I like some of the layering. I'm liking some of the cast shadows that are being created from some of the layering and things like that. Um, really cool. And again, I appreciate the presentation of your work, if you're listening. uh, this opportunity is so interesting. This artist has some grit, just from a sense of, it's like I have this idea, um, this thing that I want to do, which is get to Denmark, and then they go on to propose a few ways in which they plan on making this possible. They specify that this is a self-directed artist residency with three possible avenues to help get them there. So first, it does look like a residency of some sort of program that they have applied for. So it says here, in the event that they are not chosen for that opportunity, that there is an art and community space over there that has modest studio spaces for rent. And then it says here, alternatively, I am fully capable of setting up a studio space in my accommodations while on the island. And so it's like, however I got to do it, I'm going to get there. And so I definitely appreciate that. And I absolutely hope that they're able to make it there. So again, just this idea of immersion, right? Rings loud and clear with this opportunity, which I think is really cool. I like the idea of a zine at the end, just something that says, hey, here's what I have done, here's what I've made. I like that they're wanting to offer it as a free option as well. I noticed something that was brought up earlier in terms of, potential barriers to what's being done. But it also does raise some questions. I don't believe I saw much in here in terms of um, how to, create and distribute said free zines. Um, well, actually, I do see a sentence here that says they have commitments from the Contemporary Dayton and the Roger Glass Center for the Arts to carry the free zines, so that's good. Um, Looks like they are wanting to get a decent sized publication. I see 250 of these zines. Um, but I am pretty curious about the making of them. And I mean, I do see, let's see, paper for zine production, 250 copies, about $145 for the papers, and some other things, printing and handling of zine, $450. I'm wondering, um, just for needing so many, I mean, 250 zines sounds like a lot. So I'm wondering about the size of them. Um, just understanding that print can be pretty expensive. Um, so I do wonder about the size, not only with the dimensions, but just the number of pages per zine. Um, that is definitely of interest to me. But again, I do like the idea. I like the work. I like the determination that they have to be able to make this happen. Yeah, those are some of my initial thoughts.
Okay. Thanks, Jamal. Let's
Mhm.
go ahead and open it up to the floor for some discussion.
Thought the project timeline was very detailed and descriptive, and at first I had some apprehension about a self-directed residency, wondering what that is. Because of many other residencies, there's mentors or experts in a particular area. But again, the way the project timeline's described in the detail and the introspection, it makes me confident that this is achievable to a self-directed immersion. So, because that's a natural, um, I think, apprehension that you wonder, will the self-immersion, self-directed nature lend itself to anything developing? And you wonder that's a lot about personal discipline and personal goals. And that she's very clear with the goals in the proposal of what the artist hopes to achieve during this grant proposal. And I think it's well tied together.
Thanks, Mike.
I think the zine is really cool and I think it'll be a great public benefit, but I would really love to actually have there be an exhibit representing some of this work and a talk or two, around it and about his experiences in Denmark. Um, sorry, wrong pronoun. Um, so I just felt like that again, that public benefit part could be expanded a little bit more than just the zine. Um, I was going to check on the budget situation. I don't have any specific comments about that.
Okay,
No.
thanks.
I think the incorporation of even something as innovative as QR codes expands the ability of the public to be able to access it. But as much as you would hate to say it, just about everybody has a phone. And so the ability to be able to access the artwork is one of them. Clearly, I've stated this over and over again. How do we get the creativity to as many people as possible, to influence as many beyond minds across ages, across ethnic barriers, across economic barriers? How do we get the work out so that people can be exposed to the art and be inspired by it? And even something as simple as a QR code is innovative, but it's the first one we've seen to help give confidence that the works can be available to people at large. So it's a detail is there that others may take en passant and say, well, I'm going to do that. Well, this grant proposal obviously included the words, so it makes and enhances the proposal's completeness to be able to reach the general public.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Are we happy with this one? Any last comments before we move to the next application? Good. Okay. Let's go ahead and move to our next application, which is 20826. And Mike, you are our primary reviewer for this applicant. Can you please get us started for 826?
For 20826, the one sentence description is the applicants will to travel to museums and art galleries across Ohio and neighboring states exploring exhibitions that illuminate the Great Migration in Black history, creativity, while developing my own artistic style and documenting my journey to share in a complete body of work. And I think this is a very strong application of immersion into a venue, but more than that, venue is 6 months long. The artist talks about taking a journey both physically and artistically and being open to what's going to happen. It's very well detailed, the path that she's going to take on the journey of the different venues that she's going to explore, but that she's also taken time in her timeline to document time to develop the work and see what creates as a result of her journey. So I think it's a logical step in her career to do an immersion, but in this case, it's a long immersion. It's not a 2-week or 3-week seminar. It's a commitment of 6 months of her time for this journey. And I think it represents a huge step in the impact on her own personal career. I will point out that I was very impressed with the 5 professional goals, the potential impact. She's very specific of 5 professional goals that she would like to achieve. And I understand that people want to set goals. And it's one thing to set artistic goals of wanting to complete a work, but it's another thing to want to set goals and be open to professional development, grounding yourself in self-identity, establishing a new artistic style, expanding your network. These show an openness, but a focus on what to achieve during the grant, but then an openness to what could happen as well. So it's very focused in setting up a plan, but then letting the plan be open to encounters and experiences that can then be shared with the public at its conclusion. So what if I'm going to get down to the public benefit? I was particularly impressed with the public benefit, talking about community workshops, art wellness programs, and artist talks. But I did have a question. What are the plans and details of when and where such activities will occur? I think this is a common theme. It's a very well-focused plan on what they hope to achieve, but I would want to see tangible plans. And I know it's up in the air because this is 8 or 9 months in the future, but doing outreach and wellness programs and artist talks are laudable goals, but I would want to see them anchored to firm dates when they were going to occur. And I thought the budget was right in line with the proposed details. The budget was well laid out and it fit nicely with the proposed plan, the journey, and there didn't seem to be a lot of schedule compression, so that everything seemed to flow naturally to allow for the encounter of a journey.
Yeah, I definitely echo a lot of those sentiments as well, Mike. Very well thought out, very intentional. I love the idea of traveling and visiting these different sites to, to gain knowledge and find an inspiration, to then, bring back home and, begin the art making process. Questions that arise for me, um, to allow oneself only a month to create work for an exhibition, like that can be a bit of a stretch. Um, because what I would imagine is that, within that month, Well, I'll take a step back. I guess ideally work would be started before then. Um, yeah, and maybe as you're traveling, maybe things are being started with the way it's presented here. Um, it almost suggests that you're only giving yourself a month of time to create and then turn around and have a show. And that can be a pretty daunting task. But based on their um, representative work, it seems as though they may have a process that may be a bit swifter. I mean, like for myself, it would be impossible to do that many pieces, because I'm the kind of artist that spends like 40 to 60 hours on one piece. Um, but I would imagine that maybe their process allows them to crank things out at a bit of a faster pace. Um, and so then it says, they want to confirm the exhibition venue and Mayout in August of next year. That's something else that kind of raises a question for me because, a lot of times, you have to be at least some months out um, for an exhibition. And it looks like she's wanting to have an exhibition run from August 16th to October 10th. That can be a pretty tall task, with such a short amount of time. Um, for to imagine that somebody with relatively short notice will have that much time set aside for you to be able to display work and do programming and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some more upfront work being done there. Like for me personally, if I were shooting to have an exhibition in August of 2026, like from right now, I would have liked to have had that venue confirmed maybe like 12 months in advance. Um, just because you want to make sure that the venue will have that time available and that nothing will conflict and things of that nature. So, um, but outside of that, yeah, I don't think I had any other major questions or concerns.
Yeah, I would echo your concerns there, Jamal. That was the thing that jumped out to me, is that you cannot wait that long to find a venue. Uh, that's got to be moved up, but as with many of these fabulous projects, how the work is going to be exhibited is not necessarily concretely tied down yet in the application. Um, Most have thought of, certainly know that they want to exhibit, and they maybe have made overtures and they've started the process, and some have them tied down very, very concretely, but some do not. And I think that would be, and I'm sure that's got to be super challenging for an artist. Um, because they don't even know if they're going to be able to do the work because they don't know if they're going to get the grant. And so how do you confirm a location for your exhibit when you don't even know if you're going to actually be able to complete that project? So it's certainly challenging.
Excellent point. Yeah, well put.
Yeah, I thought this was a very strong application. The artist knows who they are, what they want to do, and who the audience for it is and why they're doing it. But as we pointed out, there's just some questions. The timeline I was concerned about as well. Um, I want to know more about the locations they selected to visit and why.
Mm.
And is there room within that schedule as they visit location A and people there say, oh, you need to go over here and talk to these people. Is there room in the schedule? Um, I don't know if I'm going to say something, I don't know if we're allowed to say it or not. I would like to see this as a two-part project, 1 year of just intensive research and working with building a body of work, and then
It's a good
exhibiting
idea.
it. I think trying to shoehorn them both in when this is a very broad and vast topic of extensive research, I would like to see the artists be able to fully engross themselves in that research and creating work inspired by that research and then have an exhibition. Because it seems like all of the work in the application is the research and creating work part, and the exhibition felt like it was added on because they felt like they needed to, because that's what the grant requires. So I think it's a great sounding project. Um, I could see this being a multi-year project for this artist to just really sink their teeth into. So
Thanks, you all. Let's go ahead and move on now to our next application, 20797. And Sue, you're our primary reviewer for 797. If you could get us started, thanks.
Let me scroll to where I need to be. 20797.
I have dial-up speeds today, so I can't imagine.
Yeah, I was still on the previous application, so 20797. There we go. I found it. Excuse me. All righty. Okay, so the one sentence descriptor of this one is another is I will be creating and completing a body of work to have a solo exhibition at Divisible Gallery. Doesn't give us a whole lot beyond the very fact of the very bare bones, which in a way is just fine. And then as I went through the application, I thought the project was really, really intriguing. With the found objects from her grandparents' house, and drawings and paintings, just the multidisciplinary aspect of it. It's got a lot of thought and heart behind it. I love the multidisciplinary vision that she stated, that her work creates a dance between conscious and unconscious thought, between lived experience and memories, and what emerges is a diverse range of ideas. I thought that was very well articulated. The artist seems to understand and value accessibility, and the project will make her work available to larger audiences through this exhibition. There are plans to engage the community in contemplation of themes, generational trauma. I mean, it's just really cool. I'm sure that some of that stuff may not be in stone yet, but there's certainly an intention there to have those kinds of outreach engagement opportunities speak through the project. I have to point out, tab B of the budget worksheet was not completed. The actual expenses, while presented visually, would have been presented more clearly with that tab B breakout. So again, just completing the budget part of things accurately is really key. And I think it makes a difference. But let me scroll down here to my final comments on it. It demonstrates the natural growth and expansion of the local art community, where local galleries support local artists, giving them the opportunity to further explore their artistic vision and exposing their work to a broader audience. So it's a beautiful model of that example of that model. So the main drawback for me as far as the weakness in the application was that the budget worksheet was not completely filled out. What does
Thanks,
everybody?
Sue.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
Yes. I think this is one of those opportunities where timing makes a lot of sense. I don't know if this would be a first uh, solo show for the artist, but given that they have given themselves the distinction of emerging artists, definitely feels
Mhm.
like it's something that can help propel them in their career. Um, this is one of those uh, this is one of those concepts that I think I kind of spoke to this earlier, but this idea of fostering connection through shared human experience. For her to make or for the artist to make work about, grief and processing trauma and things of that nature. It provides a great platform to expand upon those kinds of conversations. It provides a great opportunity for people to feel seen. It provides a great opportunity to maybe even help people, find new ways or new avenues of processing those emotions even. Um, so I do really like that aspect of it as well. And uh, also, as I pull the work back up here, this is very interesting work. Um, it makes me feel something, which I can really appreciate with what they're putting together. Um, but yeah, really, really pretty interesting stuff.
Thanks, Jamal.
I was curious, for the public benefit, again, the idea of getting the works out to Montgomery County at large. This is it's a very site-specific venue, and unless you're outside of the community, the artists, then you may not ever know that this work exists. So part of the outreach, maybe this is again, we talked about what recommendations we can make for the grant writers and composers to be able to give them some insight on things that they need to be considering, like how to get this out of Montgomery County libraries to at least let people know that this work exists. We fail to reach, we have no, do we have the impact? Then another question I had, the budget seemed general in its expenditures, not specific. We're used to seeing very specific line items of these costs, these brushes, this paper, this wood. I found the words, my budget for supplies is around $2,500. And I understand that maybe there's some unknowns at this point, but I would have hoped to have seen more detail in the types of supplies, which implies more organizational thought and process carrying out the grant.
Thanks, Mike. Any last comments on application 797? Okay. All right, let's take a little pause here because we're a little ahead of schedule and I do not believe the other artist is in the room yet. So we'll pause for just a moment in case they're still going to arrive. And panelists, you can take this time to look ahead to what's coming, make some notes to yourself about adjustments you may want to make, or additional comments you may want to make as you reassess the applications. Okay, thanks everybody. Let's go ahead and move forward to our next application, which is number 20780. And Jamal, you're our primary reviewer for this applicant. If you could get our discussion started. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so again, this is application 20780. And the description of the opportunity is to travel to Vermont Studio Center residency in Johnson, Vermont, where I have been accepted and will attend the April Artist Residency and develop my skill of painting and sculpture, which will conclude in a Dayton exhibition. 1 second here. I'll pull the work back up. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I remember this. Yes, very. I love sculpture. Sculpture is so fun. I don't do it at all. But I have a great appreciation for it. Um, but yeah, so definitely enjoy the work. Really, really cool stuff. Obviously, I think, I mean, any kind of residency, again, any opportunity to just be able to just, fully, d detach from the constant flow of everyday life and just be able to be fully immersed in a space of creating. It's everything, truly. Um, and like, this is the opportunity where they have been accepted, and they did include um, the acceptance letter, which is great. Um, I think where's the timeline? Where's the timeline? 1 second here. Here we go. Um, okay, so you know, planning to get to work upon arrival at the residency. So work's being made there. Looks like they have a plan to exhibit work in 2027. Um, so so for this to be presented in a way where it's like there's two parts to this residency and show. And what's happening up front by way of the residency, is very concrete and fleshed out. Here are the logistics, et cetera, et cetera. What we have on the back end in terms of, how the work can be, shared, displayed, and possibly offer some public benefit is a bit less clear. I see here um, that they did. I remember they did not, but they were planning to. Maybe they've done it since submitting this application. But we're looking at the Rosewood Arts Center in Kettering to display in 2027. And they've also applied. There's a couple other galleries they list here. Um, and so, yeah, definitely curious as to what that aspect of this fuller vision could look like. Um, but as far as with what they already have locked in, um, I think is great. Um, as I look here, how they want to use the funds, so wanting most of the funds to pay the cost of the residency. They've already committed some of their own funds, which is a great sign. Um, and so, yeah, just really curious to see what things could look like on the back end. But on the front end, um, it feels pretty solid.
Thanks, Jamal. So open it up to the rest of the panel to flesh out the conversation here about applicant 780.
I had some concerns about the key dates in the workflow. There's a specific date of attending the residency in April. Aside from that, the workflow doesn't show any other specific tasks tied to specific dates. So workflow seems too vague or not well defined at this point. I understand there needs to be some flexibility. Time to develop artistic works requires, time for them to formulate to be able to create. But I don't see specific tasks in the workflow of the whole project tied to specific dates. So it seems to be too up the air. And I also don't see a 2026 venue for highlighting. The project timeline talks about a plan to exhibit them in 2027, to be outside of the grant period. And we've talked about this before. I think either Jamal or Sue brought it up. It's hard to get a commitment for a venue. You don't know if you're going to get a grant. But I would like to hear the artist acknowledge those words. Like, I'm looking at a venue, but it's difficult to plan at this time. But I don't see any specific venue for 2026 to highlight as a result of residency.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Sue?
I I was just typing a note saying that I was having a real hard time hearing Mike and understanding him. It's coming back to me, at least, very garbled, so I really couldn't catch most of the wonderful things I'm sure you just said, Mike.
Do I need to speak louder?
That actually does help. That does help. Thank you. That might be it. I'm not sure what was going on.
I mean, Brent, did you hear me, or do I need to repeat my comments?
Let's let Sue go, and then we'll circle back around to you again, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Me looking through my my notes here. I don't really have anything additional to add compared to what's already been said. It's just, again, the exhibition and the public benefit as far as like workshops or any kind of, again, outreach exposure is yet to be firmed up. And that's kind of the nature of what we're seeing a lot of. But at least in this case, the plan is for the exhibition to be in the 2027 cycle. So that's wise, because then at least the artist has the entire year and is more likely to be able to get their work approved for a show at Sinclair or Divisible or Front Street, whatever comes through for them.
Can I ask a question for my own benefit? But I think this may be a point to set panelists' minds at ease about an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But this is somebody who's applying for a residency, yes or no?
They were accepted to a residency.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is by definition, this is a professionalization opportunity. And there's no requirement for a professionalization opportunity that they even have a show. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. That is a
Mm-hmm.
requirement for somebody who's creating new work.
Huh.
Okay. So yeah, the fact that there's even an exhibit that they're talking about in 2027 is above and beyond.
Okay. Great. Yeah, that's a great distinction.
Just
Thank you.
for some clarification on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I feel like I only thought it was of importance just because they mentioned it in the
right.
in the description.
Yeah, and the entire budget is about the residency and all of that. So that's not an issue as far as their eligibility or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's huge. Thanks, Ren, for clarifying.
Yeah. And I'm sorry if that was part of the confusion with some of the others. My impression was with the others, they actually were asking for funding to create new work. And if that's the case, then yes, that how they're sharing that work with the public is something that they are expected to do within the 2026 timeframe. But it's not for a professionalization opportunity.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. They're treated very differently. And it is, yeah, it's why it's important for an applicant to identify whether it's a professionalization opportunity or a new work. One of the things that is new for this year is that we had a number of artists design their own professionalization opportunity. Okay. Where they're not going to a residency, but they're doing something similar. If we can backtrack to 826, for example, if that person identified they're visiting these different historical sites, okay, in Black culture, in Black history in the US as a professionalization opportunity, then there's no real requirement for the exhibit, right? But if they said this is to create new work, then there is. Okay.
Ah,
And so
okay.
it is an important distinction, not just for the panel, but also for the applicant to be able to think that through a little bit. So this is why the training sessions and the workshops are important to attend. Because it's a small detail until it's not.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm done now. Thank you for listening, but that was my intervention. Let's go back to our discussion of 780 if we could.
Now, can you hear me
I'm
okay
pretty
now,
much done.
Sue?
Yeah, I can now,
Mike,
Mike.
if you could just give us a quick breakdown of what you said.
Well, it's kind of irrelevant now that you've expanded, because I think this is
Oh, okay.
I wanted to see specific activities tied to specific dates. So I still believe the schedule is a bit vague. But the comments I made about the venue in this particular grant application is unique. I think others have tied the residency experience with a planned show. So
Yeah.
I think our concerns in those cases have been valid. This one, it was nice to understand that, like I think both Tim and Jamal have mentioned, that sometimes the artist needs more time in order to create the works and then plans for venue in 27. So I'm good. I actually turned
Okay.
off my cooling fan on my computer, and I think that was creating a garbled noise that was making me sound weirder than normal.
No, I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate you, Jamal, as our primary reviewer for 780. That was your last one to lead on, so applause. All right, we're in the last one, so everybody's primary for their last time. Let's take applicant 20786. And Mike, this is your last time being the primary reviewer. Again,
Okay.
for applicant 786, if you could get us started on that discussion.
So for 20786, the one sentence description is the applicant is applying for a grant to organize and publish an art book titled Amateur Astronautics about his recent body of work, and that it's going to be done through the Neon Temple Press. So I understand that the proposed work is going to focus on the artist's desire to deepen the understanding of his craft and professional assessment of his work. And so the work focuses on going out and getting 7 professional assessments, testimonials from peers and colleagues to assess his body of work. And so I did have a question. Does this fall within the grant ideals that the focus is an assessment of work that's been previously done? So this work, I don't get the impression that any new work will be created, but there will be a work piece created that's a culmination of professional assessment of his body of work, if I read the project description correctly. So it seems to me to still be valid, but I didn't know if it falls in a gray area. My primary concern is the work timing. Going out, he has agreements with his peers for professional assessment, but I'm wondering what plans are made if they don't come through. It's not a payment issue, it's a impact on the work issue. If the culmination is an assessment of his professional work to date, and some people don't step up and meet their obligations to assess his work, what's going to be the impact? Does he just go with 5 or 6 professional assessments, or 4 or 5? The other concern I had was his some of his statements were for the timeline, hoping that all of the writing would be complete by a certain date. I understand part of that, but what are the plans if the respondents don't provide what he needs in a timely fashion? What's his backup plan? Because the idea would be to publish his work and make it available to the public. But I wonder, does it meet the requirements for new works created? Now, let me scroll down to the that the critical reviews of his works by his colleagues will deepen the understanding of his style and craft, and I understand that from a professional development. But the public benefit comes from the sale of this book, and I know I've talked about this before. If there are barriers to the sale, how do people gain access to the work? And if the book is for sale, what's done with the funds that result as from those sales? Do those funds still remain in the public benefit? What are the plans to return those funds from the sales of the books to the general public at large? Can the book be distributed through the Montgomery County Library system? Do they have a way to put out an ebook? So again, it's the artists producing a limited number of books for a cost. And what barriers does that place for people to gain access to that material and his artwork and his development?
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Let's open the discussion to the floor.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of go along with some of those questions, it looks like the goal here is to produce 20 copies, which, isn't, too significant of a reach. And so that definitely, as it ties into public benefit, definitely raises some questions. So we'd definitely like to see some other possibilities be explored in terms of just sheer reach of this final product, if you will. I think the idea itself, very straightforward, very concrete. The the work itself, I definitely appreciate the consistency of sort of building out this work across an 8-year span. I definitely can respect and appreciate that level of discipline. This astronaut motif is really interesting. And I guess not only again with the repetition of it, but the way that it's sort of repurposed to present different avenues of nuance, I think is really interesting as well. Contingencies to consider, definitely make a lot of sense, as far as if there are writers that can't, come through on their obligations and things like that. But yeah, very, very interesting opportunity. And I definitely can understand that professional development aspect of it. I feel like it could be very fruitful for the artist to have something like this come to fruition, for sure.
Thanks, Jamal.
I'm scrolling back through trying to find what I've referenced in my comments. Under public benefit, I thought I had read somewhere and I can't find it now, not specifically under public benefit. Or maybe I'm just not scrolling properly, that there are some cool interactive things that are sort of being thought of in conjunction with the book. So an interactive, some kind of exhibit that goes with the book sounds like it might be something that's being thought of. And I can't find the notes. I can't find the reference to that. I'm probably just scrolling too quickly, but I found that very intriguing and would add another level to the public benefit and a way for community members to interact with the art beyond looking at it in the book. And I also, what you guys are bringing to point is like if not all those writers come through and the majority of the budget is paying the writers, then does that money just get repurposed or when an artist and a recipient of a grant has changes in their budget as far as how the money is spent. I guess that's not something we don't really need to worry about. That's not really what we're here to discuss. But I just thought that that would be that 20 copies seemed like not a lot of copies as well. Again, because I'm always thinking of larger distribution. But um, this is definitely very unique and very different from most of the other projects we've reviewed. The kind of art that this artist creates is very unique and very thoughtful, and it's just different. And I appreciate the style a great deal.
So just to kind of interject real quick about, changes to a project after funding
Mm-hmm.
is CultureWorks does provide a project revision form to all artists and or applicants, organizations as well. We do this for any grant, and they can use it as many times as they need to get those kind of significant changes approved in the now. And that
Mm-hmm.
way, what happens is when they come around to that final report, nobody's surprised. Okay.
Right.
And the approval process is kind of embedded in it. And we do that because the creative process, of course, has, yeah, yes, it can change. Things change, and we want artists to have that freedom to develop in that way and follow their whimsy. But we also want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to steward public funding for that craft. So that's built into the structure, just an FYI. It's a fair question. It is a concern because you all have two jobs. You want to support the arts in our region, but you also understand that these are public dollars, right? And so that's a fair question.
I do want to point out in this one, I know we're running out of time, that Mike nailed something I had a feeling, but I couldn't figure out what it was, which was it's not a creation of new work, from what I can tell. It is a compendium of previous done work. And that was something that I was feeling, but I couldn't put words to it. And the future of the book and information about how additional copies would help serve to strengthen the application. And I found personally the repetition of the same information across several sections to be unnecessary. Those words and the word count could have been used to strengthen the project as opposed to repeat the information we've already gone over. So maybe reading the application out loud, you would catch those things before pressing the submit button.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Okay. Any final comments on 20786? Okay, thanks everybody. And thank you, Mike, for leading your final discussion. And with that, we will go to our final application for review today, 20822. And Sue, will you please start us off as the primary reviewer for the last time?
Yay! Okay. So the one sentence description on this unique project is that the funds will be used to create and produce a Dayton, Ohio-based hip hop documentary that highlights the city's culture, artists, and history. This was a really interesting project, and we've all probably been aware of all the discussion about funk in Dayton and the funk museums and the two different funk museum ideas that were sort of in competition for a time. It's really interesting to hear someone say, "Oh, but wait, there's more. There's also the hip hop world that Dayton has strong ties to." So, if I can just get my scrolling to work properly, here we go. Um, I think it's a very intriguing and worthwhile multidisciplinary collaboration, as well as a potential community impact and audience development project. But there are a few areas where the application could be improved. Specifically, one of the ways would be through the budget. This is one area that just suffers a lot from a lack of detail. The entire budget is slated for paying the artist, the applicant, for his video services, video and editing services. And he provides an example of a previous invoice he used for a previous project. And he does provide greater detail in the narrative description of the budget. But it seems that there are other expenses along the way in a project like this that are not, haven't been thought of yet, or at least haven't been listed. Having done a few video projects in my time, the timeline does seem a little optimistic for the scope of this project. But I think it's a fascinating idea, and I would like to see it, I'd like to see where it goes. So I'd like to hear what the rest of the panel think about it.
I do want
Don't
to
everybody
thought
talk at once.
I do
thought
want to
this was
add
a strong
just I do want to add just real quick that this is a person who already has a contingency plan, should they move forward about the budget issues, Sue, that you so eloquently
okay.
highlighted. So, and this person has already taken initial steps to address the discrepancies between the budget form and the budget narrative in
okay.
writing. But, we want the assessment to fall on, the original submission. So you don't have access to that. But I do want to let you know this is definitely one of those contingency plans.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Oh, I have so much fun making this scroll properly. Does everybody else have that problem? This is a really great app that this is all done in, but I have just great fun sometimes getting it to scroll properly. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I agree. I think this is a strong application as well. I had some of the same concerns. I thought the schedule timeline was a bit optimistic or aggressive, and the work sample shows that they can put together work quickly. But I think something for this scale and topic needs not to be rushed or done in a short period of time. This isn't a 48-hour movie project. This one I think, deserves the time to fully develop it and edit together and get the narrative together. One thing that would have strengthened it was a little bit more explanation and detail as to the role and history of hip hop in Dayton. There are several mentions of the hip hop masters, but they were never identified. And not being a member of that community, I don't know the role and history of hip hop in Dayton. And having a little bit of education in the application would help. If you think about it as Shark Tank, and you're looking for investors for your project, explaining to the investors who may not be familiar with your topic why this is important and who is the subject matter of it would have helped strengthen the application, which is already a strong application. But I would like to see, like I said, I'd like to see it have the time to fully develop and mature as a professional documentary that could be streamed or sent around to film festivals. And as an investor, more details to help me understand who and why. I mean, I get it, I like it, but I want to know a little bit more about the grit and dirt of what it's going to cover.
I would
Yeah.
have liked to have seen more detailed description of the proposed venue. With unique as the work is that's proposed, um, getting the work out to the public and having performance venues or multimedia venues specified would be a lot easier for me to see the tangible public benefit. I mean, you can apply a public benefit, but you want to actually see the words and the actions and the timeline that's going to bring that public exposure to light.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm looking back in here, um, I just had it. I just heard it. Oh, here it is. So, and this is in a section about use of the funds. But towards the bottom, so there's, there's this very descriptive, you know, process in terms of how things are going to be done and how funds are going to be used. And then it says, just very briefly here, share the finished project with both local and global audiences, and which just begs the question, how, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, this is something that truly does feel massive,
Yeah.
or at least has the potential to feel massive. And so I'm wondering, just how much thought was given to, just where this could end up, or just, just sheer best case scenario for something like this. And this is something that more visual artists need to think about, myself included. We'll have the ideas and there's that initial excitement and we want to get the ball rolling and get things started. But okay, so we put in all this time and energy to do this work, and then what happens to it? Where do we want it to live? Where do we want it to go? What are those audiences that we think, you know, would really appreciate this work? Um, and so sometimes, we may even have to, start at the end and then sort of, reverse engineer from there. But I think something like that sort of shifting of the creative process could really be beneficial.
I'm
Thanks, Jamal. That was well said. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm appreciating that commentary. We've audience and community engagement and public impact and that kind of stuff has been one of the running themes for our conversations. And as I'm listening to you, Jamal, I even think of that kind of colloquialism or cliche that you hear where it's like, walk to your own drummer and your people will find you, or your audience will find you, kind of a thing. But you can't have that attitude when you're writing a grant. Unfortunately, I mean it's a true statement, but at the same time, you really do have to be able to articulate the impact you want your work to have, and I feel like that can be hard to do. But anyway, that was just trying to bring a common theme around. I'm going to let you all go back to the assessment.
I had another question, I guess, and that was in evaluating the what work samples were provided. And I spent some time watching everything I could, and what bothered me, and I think the artist deserves credit for his work. And if he's, been, really involved in what the one video link that he gave us, and then there was a showing at the Neon at the end of October of a film that he was involved with, but I couldn't find that he was credited anywhere in them. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If this guy was so involved with these projects, why isn't he, he deserves to have his name and be given the credit that he's due in those projects. And unfortunately, they didn't seem to mention him. And that really kind of concerned me, both for his sake and as a grant evaluator, what we should, how we can evaluate this applicant's um, ability, I guess, to actually proceed with a project of this scale.
One more comment from me on that front.
Hmm.
A lot of hip hop artists don't go by their birth name.
Right, and it could be, that's true. It could
Yeah.
have been another name. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the important thing is just to make sure that detail is in the application
Hmm.
so that people can actually track that. Yeah. Because that's actually a good and important comment, Sue. Yeah. Okay. We are officially over time with applicant 822, so we're going to close that. And I feel like we kind of also had our open-ended kind of thematic discussion during applicant 822's review. But in closing, do any of you want to make a closing statement to our applicants as we still record this that you would like to say before we move into a private session to discuss our next steps?
Wanted to thank them for sharing their art and their insight and their thoughts and minds with me and giving me an opportunity to experience them. I hope I've been able to be a proper steward and being entrusted with understanding their vision and their goals for what they want for these grants. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for all that you bring to our community and for the immense amount of work and mental work a grant application requires. We are not insensitive to that. We recognize that this is not necessarily the thing you want to be doing, but it's a necessary thing, and you'd much rather be concentrating on your art and your craft and working on grant applications is not anybody's favorite thing, I'm sure. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. Tim's like, well, wait a minute. I love writing grants. That's one more thing that makes you unique, Tim. But again, yes, thank you so much for your vision and your art and what you bring to our community.
Um, yeah, I would just like to say that I hope this discussion has been able to provide some value. Um, perhaps getting, the artist to, think in a certain way or just take something away from this that they can use as they continue their creative journeys. Um, no matter what happens, just stay confident, stay focused, stay determined. And there's lots of funding out here, so just keep applying, keep going after what you need so you can do what you want, and everything will pan out the way that it should.
And I want to say, being a part of these panels is a great reminder of the diversity of what is the art scene in Dayton and Montgomery County. And we're only seeing a small tip of the iceberg of what's really going on within the community. Because
Yeah.
these are the people who, one, found out about the grant, and then two, put the effort to put together. So we're only seeing a small part of the creative community of Dayton in this audience. And even then, look at the diversity of what's happening within the community. So again, like we've said, I want to echo the thanking the artists for doing what they do and helping to be themselves and grow the community. So the community of Dayton and the creative community. So, and I hope, Ren, I don't know what report goes off to MCACD and the mayor and city council of here is what the creative community is doing in Dayton and Montgomery County and how MCACD is helping to keep that happening. So
Yeah. No, I was going to add that as well, which is what a gift it is to live in a county, that actually does provide public funding, not just to the arts generally, but to individual artists at every stage of their career, um, to allow them to grow in their craft. Um, and to recognize what the arts can give back to the community as well. It's a really special thing. And it really is every time I sit in this chair for a public panel, I'm just deeply gratified that I made the move here um, from Northern Kentucky. And I am a Kentucky girl. I do love it. But to live here and to see this and to be a part of it is very meaningful to me, and it's a true honor. And I think I speak for CultureWorks and MCACD on that front. And I want to thank each of you panelists for being here today, especially considering our special circumstances 3 weeks ago. So thank you so much, bottom of my heart. To those artists who are still in the room, at this time, we need to ask you to please leave so that we can enter a closed session with just the panel to discuss our next steps. We will be scheduling our next meeting, which is when we will discuss funding decisions. So at this time, I am going to remove you and thank you for being here.